welcome, everybody, to a brand new episode of HOSTility, a show where I I and other hosts of this channel sort of show off friends of ours and the work that they do and various bits of things they have in the works. And today, I think we're just going to jump straight to the conversation and not dilly-dally on a bunch of announcements and stuff. I want to introduce you to you, a person who's actually been on this channel before, but not, I think, directly with me, though I might have antagonized some of the callers who called in to speak to him, and I think it was John at the time. My friend David Fitzgerald, a person, I meant it to look like this. Hang on, it was supposed to go zoop, not fade. This is so much better, I find. Yeah, I think this is way, way better. David Fitzgerald, who joins me not every Sunday, but on some Sundays, you're able to be there on Aron Ra's channel where we read the Book of Mormon. Now, David, you weren't actually yourself a Mormon. However, you've taken a deep interest, it would seem, in Mormonism and wrote, one could say, the book, not that one, but the other book on Mormonism. Yeah, tell people a bit about the book and what's in it and what it is.
Yeah, well, I've been an atheist forever and ever now, but before that, I was a Southern Baptist, which is, we all know, is the anti-Mormon. And so that's one thing my Baptist brain and my atheist brain could agree on, is that Mormons are all going to hell. Yeah. I actually lucked out many years ago. I kind of inherited a library from a friend of mine, Don Havis, who just had every single Mormon book you could imagine, and the Tanners, and just this whole library of amazing collection of stuff. And so I've been a Mormon fan as long as the South Park guys have. It feels like, and the ironic thing is I don't consider myself a Mormon expert at all in any way, and yet what I consider myself in is more of an expert in the historicity issue about Jesus. And there's so many atheists out there who, like, they will cite me chapter and verse on Mormonism and say, "Oh, but the Jesus mythism, that's crazy." But he does really good research on Mormonism. It's like, wow, it's just ironic.
I've enjoyed a parallel experience of something like that, where people will express, like, man, I love the way Jimmy uses logic and reasoning to argue with theists, or I love the way he utilizes skepticism when it comes to theism, and how he utilizes skepticism when it comes to why he's like a secular humanist and everything. I love all of that, but I hate how he's so loud about the trans issue and where he's come down on that, not recognizing that I utilize the exact same standards and systems to come down to why I support the trans community and everything. And it's the things which you are admiring me for those rare people who make the mistake of admiring me ever. Those things which you are making the mistake of admiring me for are also the things that led me there. It was my consistency and my inability to suspend that. And so there is an irony when you're like, so what you're saying is, when you like what I have to say, the method by which I get there, you're real into it. But when you don't, suddenly it's, what
that double-edged sword hurts. Yeah.
No, I feel that. So I'm curious. So, all right, let's start with this. First of all, we are still taking calls. The HOSTility is still the thing it is the most. Every show on this channel, every version of every show on this channel will always have some sort of call-in portion. More than anything else, that's the guarantee. So the phone number's down there, 720-619-2288. Both of us are atheists and skeptics. If we have a theist who wants to call and challenge us, tell us we should be believing in God for whatever reason, you have that. Tonight's general topic, whether you're an atheist or a theist, if you want to call in with some sort of inquiry about Mormonism, you have an expert who won't call himself that, but you have a historical expert on Mormonism, and you have a person who lived that religion real hard, also present. So that would be the other. It's sort of both categories. Those are the things we're generally taking calls on tonight. 720-619-2288. If you're calling from outside of the country, you might have better luck with the web link in the description. Some people inside the country have better luck with the web link in the description, especially if you already have like good microphones and headphones and stuff. That's the way to do it. But I would love to talk to some Mormons tonight. I definitely would. How about you?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I don't want anybody to think that we're making fun of your religion because we don't like you. Whatever religion you've got, we hate all the other religions just as much as you do. So don't think we're picking on anybody in particular.
Well, I have no problem saying, of course I grew up in that cult. I grew up with that scam. The one that we are here talking about tonight ruined my family, destroyed my family on the basis of this family only can be cohesive if everybody just becomes subjects themselves to the church's whims and the whatever the church wants, as well as whatever our Father who interprets the church's will wants. So I have no problem saying, like, no, I have a personal disdain for Mormonism, which goes beyond my general disdain for religion, for the selfish reasons of what it specifically did to me and my family. I'm willing to be entirely. I'm just saying, don't lump me in as the we. You might be unbiased in your application. I embrace my bias with full honesty.
Cop, bad cop today, and I'll be the good cop. If your religion makes you a better person, hey, I'm all for it. Go for it. Yeah.
If that happens, if it makes you a better person, Yeah, no,
it's for every one person who can say that, there's like 12 people that makes them raging, psychotic, delusional assholes. So depending on which religion you are and the level of toxicity it has.
And so,
speaking of toxic, let's talk about the Mormons.
Yeah, exactly. There's an interesting question there. One of the things that Owen and I, when we've gotten together before, have discussed is sort of our like rankings of like mainstream religions, which ones are the worst, which are the cultiest of the cults. We've decided Jehovah's Witnesses are above Mormonism, not by a huge gap, but above. They're worse.
It's funny you say that because I've been, in theory, planning to do a book on Jehovah's Witnesses for a long time now.
Yeah.
But it's so depressing. Mormonism, no matter what you say, love it or hate it, it's fascinating. And its history is fascinating.
Yes.
Jehovah's Witnesses is just a Sunday school that went really, really wrong and controlling and
I think there's something about let's say somehow scientifically I'm able to live longer than a human should expect to live. I could see myself a couple hundred years removed from Mormonism ending, because I think Mormonism will come to an end. At least in its religious form. I think some corporate forms of Mormonism will stick around. But in its religious form, I think
ethnic form for that matter.
What's that?
It's almost become its own ethnicity actually at this point.
Yeah, it'll that's true. Yeah. The Utah.
It'll be like the Amish. It'll be like the Amish or the Samaritans or the Druze,
descendant. I'm a descendant of Mormons, but married in. Though I've got some original British, like the first group of British Mormons. I've got some of them in my ancestry. But there's a couple. If I were at least a while removed from the end of Mormonism, I think I'd become very interested in collecting memorabilia. You know what I mean? Like having the historical stuff around in a sort of morbid way. I'm trying to remember who.
I totally get that.
Yeah. Fit like surrounding like myself with the history of both my oppression and my family's participation in oppressing others with it. Because it truly is one of those things where it's the fucked up thing about Mormonism. It both turns you into an oppressor and the oppressed. It is.
Yeah, you can say that for all the religions, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I suppose that's that. I've talked about the concept of you're usually a victim before you're the monster when it comes to religion and the radical things that they spread. But I'm curious, in writing your book, did you stick specifically only to that which you could find significant historic precedents for? Or did you also, because this is one of the things that I wonder if gets missed a lot, are how many things in the church aren't necessarily ever canonized, but they're, you know, maybe they're
Right.
said once or
Right.
twice by somebody,
The
but they
craziness is
rely
still
on the culture of the church to maintain it. So as far
Right.
as your book goes, what was your method there?
Yeah. Well, I guess my goals were to set about talking about the history of it, how it came together, starting with Joseph Smith as a convicted con man in 1826, and going through his death and through the early Mormon years.
Yeah.
And then doing fun stuff like, and this is how we know Mormonism's crazy beliefs are bullshit because blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Especially the archaeology of it.
Right.
And if you learn nothing else from this talk, the next time Mormons show up at your door and you really want to have fun with them, just ask their recommendation for a good book on Mormon archaeology.
Yeah.
Because there's not one out there, and they should know that, you know.
Yeah. It is sort of wild. The implications of the sheer size of their story. Imagine the size of the biblical story with not a single thing in Jerusalem to point to anything in the Bible happening. Like that's how big, bigger perhaps. I mean, wars of millions of people dying in a single war, in a single battle.
Right. Oh, with steel swords.
With steel swords. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow. David, with God.
It is ironic you started talking about Jerusalem, because the book I'm working on now is talking a lot about the backstory of the Old Testament / Hebrew Bible, and how our most favorite characters in the Old Testament probably didn't exist at all. And if David and Solomon existed, and honestly, I could see it going 50-50 at this point, they're nothing like what we think they were. Yeah. And there was no kingdom, there was no united monarchy. None of that existed at all. At best, these guys were like bandit chieftains.
I know there was already some scholarly understanding that, like, David, the story of King David, if he existed at all, also possesses within it the story of many other characters and myths of the time.
Well, there's definitely multiple fairy tales about this character being put together, slapped together.
Yeah, ascribed to him.
But none of them reflect the realities of 10th century Jerusalem. And it's not until about 100 years later that we actually have any kind of good historical evidence for kings and courts and that situation in the Levantine. And ironically, it blows my mind that we have far, far better evidence for goddess worship in Israel during the 7th century than we do for anything in the entire 10th century when Saul and David and Solomon were supposed to be around.
So which do you think would be the more absurd belief to adopt? And I think I know the answer, but which would be the more absurd belief to adopt? Would it be to believe that the Book of Mormon's, any historical event in the Book of Mormon happened, especially the one of the significance, but we'll just say that war with the steel swords, the one that was supposed to happen like 1800 years ago, 18 to 2000 years ago. Or
and don't take this the wrong way, Mormons, but yours is more ridiculous because not only is it ridiculous on its face, but even what it's based on is ridiculous. So you've got two layers of ridiculousness going on. Right. They're having characters from the Tower of Babel and whatever year are they? 600 BC is when they came over to the New World.
That's what the Nephites did. The Jaredites would have preceded them. And they were from the Tower of Babel,
But when you're just reading the Book of Mormon, there's so many anachronisms that even the guys who wrote the Old Testament could not have known at that time. You know?
Right.
And we have crazy anachronisms going on in the Old Testament. So it's like you're building your mess of a religion on this mess of a religion.
So the or was going to be which one's crazier? The Book of Mormon, one of those Book of Mormon stories, or to still believe historically in the Exodus. Which is now like...
Yeah, that's right. Both of them are equally crazy. Though I think we have better archaeological evidence to show that Mormonism, as Joseph Smith started telling it, was not true. And even during his lifetime, when they started deciphering Egyptian hieroglyphics, all of a sudden you had the ability to fact check him during his own life, which he never quite copped onto and realized. And it's like, oh, it's so precious, and that he just kept digging it deeper and deeper. And
didn't care.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, there's something about how at least it's clear whoever wrote the story of the Exodus was aware at minimum of some things about Egypt, right? Maybe had been there.
Here's the big thing. I don't want to keep going too far straight from Mormonism, but the Exodus story was originally an Egyptian story from the 4th century that the authors of the Old Testament used 100 years or so later to create the Moses story.
Right. Yeah.
But
There's so much.
Let's not go down that rabbit hole, or we'll be there all night just talking about that.
I mean, I'm fine to go down any rabbit hole. Just a reminder, lines are open, 720-619-2288. We currently have both atheist and theist lines open if you want to discuss religion, theism, Mormonism, whatever with us. David is also a mythicist. He questions the very authenticity of the existence of Jesus at its core. You're welcome to call about that as well. And then if you want to ask me like what I think makes a perfect lasagna, maybe don't do that one. Maybe ignore that call. But 720-619-2288, web link in the description. Still waiting, still ready for callers, atheists and theists alike. Anyway, I had a question lined up that I've now lost.
Was it about archaeology, Book of Mormon archaeology, maybe?
Yeah, it was definitely in that realm.
Because I'm endlessly delighted by both what I call the steampunk Scientology of Mormon doctrine, and their archaeology. That whole backstory of how white people came from Jerusalem and became the Indians. And
when did you write the first book, the Mormons? I mean, it was 20. I think it was released in 2011, maybe 2013, somewhere between 2011 and 2013.
I wrote Nailed in 2010, and this was after that. So let's see what it says here. Time, of course, has lost all meaning since COVID and whatnot.
True. Yeah.
What's the date on it? Come on, date.
My main question being, there's clearly been at least a decade between now and
2013.
then.
2013.
Yeah. So a decade. Would you say that there is a new? Has so much happened? Have you learned now so much since then that a follow-up volume will eventually happen? Or do you think that you're done?
It's funny because at the end of the book, I say, there's still more we could talk about. The Jaredite submarines, the Adam God doctrine. It's like, but I have to stop now, or this is going to be Encyclopedia Mormonica. Yeah. And I think if you know Bryce Blankenagel, and I know you do, from Naked Mormonism, he and I did a podcast on Myth Vision that we thought was going to be a 6-part, 7-part, 8-part. Turned out to be a 29-part series, and we just stopped about the time they got to Utah. Because early Mormonism has got so much going on in it. And I hesitate to, I'd like to do a second edition of the book just to clean up typos and formatting issues and glitches like that. But all in all, I'm really proud of it, and it really did what I wanted it to do. It covered the things I wanted it to cover, and so I'm really proud of the book that way.
One of the things,
we could be talking about Mormonism all day long, for years and years.
I've been out of the church for a little bit longer than since the book has been written. I only left a couple years prior to when you would have released the book, and it's interesting to me, especially through our conversations, through the conversations we've had on Joseph Smith over on Orange Channel, things that I hadn't internalized really, that I'm only just now getting around to internalizing. For example, it's almost a farce to even call the current Mormon church Joseph's church. Yeah. Obviously the Book of Mormon's his, right? And all these core things. But Joseph was not trying to build what ultimately is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Arguably, he was trying to build what became the not the Reformed, the RLDS.
The Church of Christ?
No, Community of Christ is what they go by now. The reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the one that his son was responsible for the leadership of, and where his wife would go after his death. Go on.
And that's something I did talk about in the book, is how much the doctrine changes. Yeah. It's from the beginning, it's very obvious that he didn't set out to start a religion at all. He just kind of took a lark a little too far, and he was that kind of guy where he liked telling stories and making up stuff. And this thing just sort of snowballed, and he kind of made it up as he went along and borrowed from this, borrowed from that, borrowed from that. He could have, there's arguments that he borrowed the entire Book of Mormon from some other book altogether. At any rate,
this is one of the arguments
you see this impetus start growing where it's like, oh no, this is going way too far to slow down, and it just spirals out of control. And you can only go up. You can't go out. You can't tone it down. And it's like, I'm going to be president of the United States, and we're going to make America a Mormon country. And boom, next thing you know, the whole thing explodes in his face. And, trying to keep polygamy a secret. It's no matter how you slice it, Mormonism is fascinating. And Bryce and I kept making this joke. It's like, HBO, are you listening? Because this is your next Game of Thrones right here. Early Mormonism. It's got sex. It's got violence.
I wouldn't want them to do it until the church crumbles, unless it could make the church crumble. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, if anything, I feel like if you started a church right now of the church of Game of Thrones, that would succeed right now. And people would suddenly be doing apologetics for like, well, sure, that character did sexually assault the other, but, in the context of this, it would be...
There would already be a holy war and a schism over the last 3 episodes of the series.
I also, so the thing you were saying about all the stuff he stole for his Book of Mormon, this is still one of the arguments that keeps coming up. I keep seeing it on Twitter, and they'll be like, lol, you think that a guy could just come up with this in 60 days? And it's literally like, first of all, why do you believe the 60-day narrative? You really believe? We're saying he's a fucking con man and liar, as the record shows. And then you bring in this...
The record shows. Right.
That's what I mean.
That the church denied for years and years and years until here it is. Boom.
Yeah. And you're sitting here going, we're going to somehow accept this concept of 60 days, and that he did it by himself, and that he was actually sitting there with a hat, and that none of these people were his co-conspirators. Yes, the hat story is stupid. I don't think he spent much time with his face in that hat, except when he needed to perform it for some of the people who weren't in on the grift.
And I don't think the hat story even came out until much later, too.
Correct. I grew up not knowing the hat story. I grew up being told that Joseph Smith translated the Book of Mormon by having the plates in front of him, and he put on himself a breastplate and these spectacles called the Urim and Thummim, and that he looked through them and saw the words change into English, saw the symbols change into English. That was what...
If you just take that at face value, it's like, well, then why do we have words like currilomes in there? And why do you say deer when you mean horses, There's or vice versa, I should say. It's that story just doesn't hold up no matter how you kick it around. They kick the tires on that. Yeah.
There's an ex-Mormon on Twitter. I think she goes by Apostate Abish.
I love it.
Newer ex-Mormon Twitter. As people, if you want to follow her, go follow her. Anyway, she had posted the other day. I'm trying to see if I can find it here. Here it is. I'm only sharing this because I tell one joke a year that's really good. I tell a lot of okay jokes, but once a year, I just nail a joke to the wall. And she tweeted, I watched the Waco doc, and the major difference between David Koresh and Joseph Smith was Koresh wore glasses, to which I replied, Joseph wore thumbins. That's the best joke I've told all year. That's such a good, that joke... I should take that joke out for dinner. That's such a hot joke. That's so good. Anyway, it is very funny though. They have this like the 60-day narrative. They want to tell the story as close as they can to what they think the story of Muhammad is, because they think elements of that, this was just a poor peasant, illiterate child, really. And if you walked away from hearing about Joseph Smith, you'd expect a person who had never learned how to read, was like 14 years old when he made the Book of Mormon, which isn't even close to true. Like all of these things, and you're not realizing that, like, one, he was raised by school teachers. He knew how to read. The story begins with him reading a verse. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh well, and his parents were religious freaks for starters too. His grandpa and his dad, the whole family had all these prophet types in there.
Yeah.
And it was always story hour around the Smith home where he would talk about what the Indians must have done in their mound builder cities,
right.
And things like that.
Right. So that's kind of point number two. Point number two, he was already participating in this concept of the Native Americans are ancient Jews thing. View of the Hebrews was already out.
And that's not original to him either, by the way. That kind of talk was going on a lot in there.
Right. Churches emerging as new churches.
Michael Quinn, where he talks about the folk magic background to early Mormonism. I mean, that book is a brick of a book. Yeah. And it was Ichabod Crane time and the Headless Horseman. It's like this is what we're talking about. These people believed crazy ass, weird, racist things. Yeah. And it all kind of became the stew of into Mormonism.
And they all there's also this positing of this idea that all of the churches that existed then were all very structured institutions. That these weren't that this was a time when everybody was like, these are the churches to choose from. You got this, you got this, you got this. As though there wasn't charismatic preachers starting their own I'm the prophet of the new age happening. Like you'd throw a rock and you'd hit one of them.
Especially in the place where Joseph Smith started, upstate New York. The burned over district. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's amazing. Boy, God not only works in mysterious ways, he works in self-defeating ways too, it would seem. Okay, wait. I could do this all night. Let's start taking calls. 720-619-2288. There is a link in the web description, but we're going to start we'll go ahead and start calls now. Do get your calls in. We've got lines for atheists and theists. Would love to have some debate calls. Love to whatever. Just fucking call. Asshole. No, I'm just kidding. Call, please.
And if you want to have a good drinking game, I suggest the Dave as Bond villain. How many cats can he have on his lap during this interview? Yeah. I think we're up to 4 already. Yeah. 4 different cats.
It's not quite as good. That won't get you as drunk as the And It Came to Pass game we play on Sundays, but it'll get you there. But we're going to talk to Gabriel. That's right. Yeah. Gabriel in Canada. Gabriel, you're on the line.
Hi, how are you, Jimmy?
Just fine. How are you?
David?
Hey there.
I'm fine.
Yeah. What did you call in about?
I wanted to ask if you see my question. How do I engage with the people that are theists, I think, and just don't want to engage the grand debate of theism, does God exist, and all of that. For context, I live in Canada, in Quebec, and here you can see the statistics, and the vast majority of people consider themselves Christian or Catholic. But if you see the attendance in church, it's among the lowest, if not the lowest in Canada. So I think people are just culturally Christian. And so
bingo.
When I see the problem that theism poses and all of that, how do I engage people and the people take me seriously about that? Because I think it's a serious matter, and I just feel that people will be like, oh no, that's not a problem. Everyone just has their own religion for themselves, and that's it. So how do I do that?
What before we answer, I just want to ask a clarifying question, and then David, you're welcome to take on. Before we answer, what is it that you're seeing is currently the barrier that isn't being passed? Like what is day-to-day life? Because I think you were just saying, I was doing some production stuff, so maybe I missed it. I think you were just saying that you live in a very non-religious area. Was I picking that up right?
I think you were saying on paper they're very religious, but in actual practice they don't seem to be religious at all. Is that it?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So what are the consequences of that right now, Gabriel? What ways are their religiosity presently impacting your local area? Because I think this is going to be important to how I would answer the question.
Here we go.
Well, when you see in the government, you can see there is some discrimination based against some religions. Like you can see the laws that passed in recent years, banning like the wrappings of Muslims
Wearing
in
hijab,
public
that kind of thing?
functions. Yeah, hijab. I forgot the name for a moment. And all of that, but this law doesn't really discriminate against Christian because Christian are not wearing anything, and so we can see like there are some bias here and there, and you know you can see like in government places you can see the cross still being on the wall, even though we are supposed to be a secular nation and all of that. So we can see like problems here and there. I'm sure it's not as bad as what you guys have in the U.S., but we can see like there are some things going on.
Yeah. Well, you know, Gabriel, this reminds me of what English people have told me too. It's like in the UK, there's no such thing as separation of church and state, and yet no one takes either one of them very seriously. Where here in America, where on paper we do have church and state, but we have millions of religious people who think that's all bullshit, atheists made up in the 50s or something. And so it's an interesting situation you're in. My only advice is you just have to keep pointing out when you do see the pro-Christian discrimination or pro-anything religious, and focus on that. Like, this is problematic that you're doing this. You know, the whole thing about symptoms and causes, you know, when you talk about, you know, crosses on the wall, you know, that's more egregious when you actually see them discriminating somebody because of their religion or their lack of religion. Yeah. But
so
in a lot of ways,
on the real things, like the real examples going on instead of the grand ideas, so the grand debate.
Yeah,
I would focus very much on when you see it, call it out, and remind people that, you know, this isn't cute. This isn't okay for you to privilege one religion over another or none.
When you keep using the term grand debate, it almost sounds like what you're saying is your motivations are you just want to be having the debates, not necessarily that it's localized to you want to reduce the impact of what. And I'm not trying to like be a jerk to you, Gabriel, but if all you're wanting to do is find people who want to debate, one, you definitely shouldn't be trying to do that in normal society where you're just dealing with people day to day. Otherwise, you become the asshole. If you're talking about trying to make your region and where you live and the people you care about, that the hope is that you're actually going to make them better, then you engage at the level of what the specific thing is, which you are trying to improve. So if it's a local law, it's a local problem that's happening, or it's a general, it doesn't even have to be a general. You know, when somebody says something shitty about X, Y, or Z, and right now, if you walk outside of your house, you're probably going to hear somebody say something shitty about trans people. Those can be opportunities to begin those conversations. If you come hostile from the onset, you're probably going to be met with hostility from the onset as well. And it may be
something you just said reminded me, when people think you're punching down instead of punching up, it shuts off the discussion a lot of times. It's good to approach it from, hey, is it just me? I've been thinking about this and this seems really problematic. What's happening over here? This problem, this thing here.
Gabriel, why don't you share like keep it short, but give us a story of something you were trying in the vein of this, something that you were trying to do, that you weren't able to because people don't like. What was there a specific conversation, a specific person, a specific situation you were trying to engage a person and challenge what they believed on, and you failed to do so? Do you have a story like this?
Well, yeah, I remember like a few times where I started the discussion, like, this religion causes that problem. I don't remember which one, but the person said, that's just the past, or that's not that's just localized. It's not the systemic problem with religion, or something like that. Like I try starting a conversation, but people just shut it down as no, it's just people's belief. Keep them to themselves, and those problems are not worth addressing.
Yeah,
that's frustrating. You'll come to America and you'll find a whole different situation. And I think maybe a nice vacation here for 2 weeks, you'll come back to Quebec and realize maybe it's not so bad over here in Canada. Maybe.
I don't know. It seems to me like in those situations, you just need to be armed with a couple of questions. And the first question I would ask is like, okay, fine. People believe what they believe. But does it matter if what people believe is true? What if their beliefs are true or not? Or if you're talking to the individual, does it matter to you if what you believe is true or not? Does that matter? And that's probably where I would first take it. Go on, Dave.
Beliefs, and when these step outside the own person believing them, outside the believer, and it starts impacting non-believers or other different beliefs. And that's really
you are cutting out fiercely. That was, I think we dropped every third word there.
Oh no, me or Gabriel?
David.
Oh, sorry. I was saying something to the effect of when you have a belief that doesn't just affect the believer, but starts impacting people outside his faith, then you've got a problem too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'll just have to maybe learn some more, Anthony Magnabosco's way of debating. So I guess I'll work on that and maybe start slowly, like you said, the local things, the direct things that affect me and my community. Yeah, I think I'll.
But look, I'm not. Yes, that's a good. So one of the things that I try to make sure everybody understands, street epistemology is a really great tool. You should understand that it is a part of a box of tools, because a lot of people start treating it a little bit too much like, well, this is the end of religion as we know it. It is very good, but to tell you the truth, I probably, with some of the specific statements you're saying, I probably wouldn't go so street. Like if somebody is going to dismiss, well, they're just going to believe what they believe. If I'm going to ask a question, it's still going to be a little combative. Like, well, aren't there consequences to belief? So for example, if they believe something and that belief is leading them to vote a certain way or treat people a certain way, isn't the stakes of whether or not that is true, aren't the stakes then raised much higher? And so I honestly, I would reject if a person, to their face, if a person's going to just try and say as a one-off because their exercise with this in the past has been, if I just say this, people will politely not push back, which is a sort of social contract bullshit I don't subscribe to. If I just say like, well, that's what he believes, so, what are you going to do? Something.
Right.
The answer is something, and the answer I have is challenge their belief. Of course and so I'm not saying you have to roll over and always be agreeable or always Socratic or whatever. There's certainly nothing wrong with asserting something. And at the end of the day, it's no. If you want to say you're going to just believe what you believe, as long as you promise to me that, one, you're not going to try and impose your beliefs on me in any way, including voting, and two, you're not going to talk about it and try and encourage any other person, including your children, who could grow up to vote on those bases. As long as you're saying you're just going to believe what you're going to believe and you never fucking utter the words out loud to anyone ever again, fine, I will leave it alone. But the moment you try to influence this world and thereby affect other people, which either in a roundabout way could affect me or a roundabout way could affect other people I care about, I'm not just sitting here and letting you off the hook because people are going to believe what they believe.
Yeah, yeah. And you just have to look south from where you are to see what happens when that gets way off the rails and out of control.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thanks for all the chats, all those answers. I will gladly take that into action.
Yep.
Thank you.
Cool.
Merci. Pour votre question, Gabriel.
Yes.
Oh, did we lose him?
No, he's there. I don't know what language you're speaking. Was that French?
Hopefully.
Oui.
Oh yeah. Okay. Good. Baguette. That's all I know. See you, Gabriel.
Oh, c'est correct, mon ami. All right.
Merci, Gabriel.
I don't know. What am I supposed to say here? We had another call that was lining up, and then it looked like they dropped the call and terminated. We don't have. Look, I know these very topic-specific episodes. Sometimes people don't bring all the calls to the yard. We do have open line 720-619-2288. 720-619-2288. Call in if you've got your questions. You have your just whatever you want to about Mormonism. If you want to call, I just what's so fucking frustrating is
Tell me.
I spend when I use the bathroom, I check Twitter, and while checking Twitter, I tend to get some fighters. I tend to get some calls, and
on the phone, you mean?
Yeah. On Twitter, I tend to get a lot of people who are very brave on Twitter with their random characters, like a general first name, random numbers, username, anime profile photo, and their name is Philip Oliver Holes Alpha Male. That's a real one. That I've been interacting with recently.
That's adorable.
These people are so brave with total anonymity. And if you just take away one layer of anonymity, because remember, you could call in and give a fake name. We'll call you Philip Oliver Holes. We'll call you Mike Hunt, right? We'll call you Mike Roch. We'll call you whatever the fuck name you want to give. Generally, we only put a first name up, but we'll call you whatever. But it's so fucking frustrating that, especially this week, all these Mormons who the moment they're like, well, I don't want to have the conversation if I reveal what my voice sounds like. Again, you could give a fake name. You could give fake location.
Yeah, we won't tell your bishop.
I'm not going to post your phone number. Well, I'll tell you. So that's funny you say that. I have been asking. Phone number down here, by the way, if people want to call. We have atheist and theist lines open. 720-619-2288. It's funny you say the bishop thing because so for example, someone used the F slur. We can't use it on YouTube. Otherwise I'm queer and I would just say it. I feel like that's my word to reclaim if I want, but use the F slur to describe me this last week. And my response every time is, hey, what stake are you in? All I'm saying is you're anonymous on Twitter. What threat is it to you if I send these anonymous screenshots to your stake president? I don't get it. What would be wrong with it's just screenshots of you calling me Effie man, right? It's just screenshots of our conversation. I said a few things in there. I called you a piece of shit at some point. Don't worry. Your stake president's going to see I was hostile. I'm sure that your stake president will sit and go, it's good that one of my parishioners.
They're very type.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. He won't even know which one it was. All he'll know is that somebody in his stake under his leadership engages with people like me in the style that you engaged. I don't understand why it's not going to help me find you. You're on this as Matt 212-367-999-4821. Like that's your username. And then your name above it is something like Matt Butt Munch or something stupid. And then it's just a picture of nothing, just a terrible drawing or weirdly a lot of anime profile photos. And none of you want to like call in and reveal your voice or just tell me what stake you're in. I would love to be able to email your stake president, because I'm still a member of the church and I can still access the database.
Nice.
Yeah, it's fucking creepy as fuck. Is if you have reported to your ward where you live, your phone number, all of that kind of stuff, there's a directory, and anybody else who's in the church can find you.
That is
your address and your phone number. And in the past, there's been problems where missionaries have updated that information without the consent of people wanting to be so easily tracked down. Anyway,
Let me interrupt.
Go on.
It just occurred to me, a great shameless plug that's also topical I could throw at you. Are you a science fiction fan at all?
I pretty much read exclusively nonfiction, but I like TV, sure. You know?
No. It just, if there are some Mormon / science fiction fans out there, my time travel trilogy, Time Shards, features in book 3 Porter Rockwell, Sidney Rigdon, Joseph Smith, and Brigham Young all make an appearance. And Porter Rockwell's a major character in book 3.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that's fun.
Yeah, that's
it's super fun.
I would love to get a stake president on the show.
Wouldn't that be cool?
I'd way more love to get an apostle. You know what's so funny? Somebody the other day was like, I put out the thing. I was like, hey, all you Mormons are saying people who don't debate aren't because they're cowards. I will debate any of you if you get an apostle to debate me. And on your deal, if they don't, it's because they're cowards.
I wonder if the Clergy Project, how many Mormon clergy are in that?
So I know I know a couple of 70 have made it over the years, but they were like lower end sort of regional 70 that know what, like, they're
still,
not
that's higher up the hierarchy ladder than I would have expected. Yeah.
It's as high as you can get that isn't directly an apostle or thing like presiding bishop or whatever. Those are sort of the tier amongst the tiers. I would love to debate. But the funny thing was, in response, we do have a couple calls lining up. We'll jump on these here in just a second. The funny thing about the I lost it.
Oh no.
Stake president. Oh, the challenge going out there is a bunch of people were like, that you think you could even stand a chance against an apostle in debate. And I'm sitting here going, okay, so send them. Have them own me. I have deconverted thousands of Mormons. Thousands now. That's what the emails say anyway. I have participated between the line and Jimmy Snow. Granted, the Jimmy Snow channel probably had the bigger Mormon impact, where I have hundreds of thousands of views. And I have assisted in the deconversion or the continued deconversion, maintaining the continued deconversion of thousands of Mormons. What would be more useful than sending an apostle to show me for the fraud that I am, if I am indeed a fraud? Send me, I will.
Speaking of fraud,
I will debate anybody who gets me an apostle. I will platform anyone on this channel for 2 hours if they first get me an apostle. Go on, sorry.
And you have to call me if you because I grab my popcorn and watch that show.
Fuck yeah.
That's a good hour of television right
I don't even do debates. Like, name a debate. I don't do them. I'll do these. And by the way, it'd be easy. The apostles would be so easy to beat. With one armed behind my... You could forbid me from using words that start with a letter, and I'd still wreck them, even having to dedicate so much time to figuring out how to omit them.
No doubt whatsoever.
Yeah, easy.
And what I was thinking, though, is, and this happened when I was researching the book, the Mark Hofmann affair. I'm sure you're well aware of that name. I'm surprised that just didn't finish the Mormon Church in the 80s, full stop. But then again, look at the Catholic Church, what they've weathered. But it's like, when I was researching that, it just seemed really obvious to me that once you get to a certain level up the church, there's no way you can't know that this is complete bullshit.
Right.
And it's like, you're in
that's
there,
how I feel too.
It's a family business for you. Yeah. And there's just no way.
For those who don't know, Mark Hofmann was basically a person who forged documents to make tons of money. And he made some of that money selling documents to the church. The big reference.
Hook, line, and sinker, because they thought he had real archaeological texts that were going to prove that the church was made up bullshit.
Right.
Which, fun fact, it is. But they didn't know that, or they knew that enough to like, oh no, we have to slam the door on this.
We got to cover this up.
And a 3-part series called Murder Among the Mormons.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I knew the whole story front and back. I was on the edge of my seat the whole series.
Do you know why I was on the edge of my seat? Is it was another one of those times where I was watching something going, damn it, I didn't bother to update my knowledge of this yet since I left the church, other than minor things, to the point that I thought, because when you, and it turned out that a lot of Mormons were told this, a lot of Mormons were told he killed himself because he was too much of a coward to face. He was within like 80 miles of where I was watching the show when I was watching it alive. Wow. Like that was the fucked up part where I was like, and it was all this stuff about like his bishop who he had confessed to, he killed his bishop in the church parking, like just making up all of these things that happened. And then he killed himself too. And it was like, you guys are fucking.
And the truth is even crazier than any of those stories. He's in prison right now. Guess who his cellmate is?
Oh, I knew this a minute ago.
The Laffertys from Under the Banner of Heaven.
Yeah, yes, one of the Laffertys. Exactly. Yeah. Is it Dan? Is it Dan Lafferty?
I don't know remember which Lafferty it was, but it's definitely one of the guys one of the Mormon murderers, you know. Yeah. And you'd think those two would have killed each other like 5 minutes out of the gate, but no, they've been cellmates forever and love each other apparently.
Which makes you wonder. It makes you wonder, like that doesn't happen if one of them doesn't ideologically change. And last I had heard, Mark Hofmann still feels pretty sincere in his. Mark Hoffman's the type of atheist that people try to paint every atheist as. The like, I'm such a nihilist that even murder doesn't matter to me, because if you kill somebody, their inability to experience suffering when you've killed them puts it into a state of that you've not really done anything wrong because they can't experience regret for what you've done. Right.
Let's be clear. That's complete bullshit. And all the lives that he ruined around them is proof of that, if nothing else.
Yeah. But, Mark Hoffman's a giant cunt.
If he hadn't been a murderer and was just a forger who just pulled one over on the Mormon church leadership again and again and again and again for thousands of dollars, he would be a hero, you know, instead of a monster. But it
is wild. And the amount of church cultural bullshit cover up they've done, the way the culture has changed. Anyway, we've got multiple calls now. So let's do it.
Let's do it.
We'll run through those. And then don't forget, we'll end the show with a super chat Q&A. But in the meantime, we have Faye in the UK. Faye in the UK, you are on the line.
Hi, Jimmy. Hi, David.
Hello.
I was told I could ask you anything. So what is your favorite kind of lasagna?
Oh, just like a ground beef lasagna.
I'm just kidding.
I know. Just like a very meaty, and you have to blend the sauce. I don't want to bite a chunk of tomato, right? I actually don't think anybody likes biting a tomato in a sauce.
This will not end. You must stop him, Faye.
No,
Only you have the power.
You did ask, but blend your sauces is all I'm saying. But anyway, go on, Faye.
Okay, so there are lots of religious schools over here, and I'm wondering, I know that there's like the Mormon BYU. Do they have like in-house religious schooling when they're younger, or is it state schooling?
So the answer is yes. It's not. So a lot of Mormons homeschool is what it's called. And usually you then follow some sort of curriculum or something that's been basically created by other Mormon homeschoolers. It can change depending on, there were some families who actually do default to like the state curriculum, but they're really only teaching then math, English, sort of basic things without getting into any specifics. And what's bigger is how much they're avoiding and the things that they're not just avoiding curriculum wise, but also the things that fuck up your head when when they avoid socializing you with people who aren't part of your homogenous group. BYU is a university. I don't know if the clarification is important to make. There's 3 of them. There's one in Utah, one in Idaho, and one in Hawaii. There are on top of that colleges like the Mormon Business College, though I haven't checked, but I assume that to avoid offending them, they've changed it to the Church of Jesus Christ of members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints Business College, because we all now know that Mormon is a slur. David, have you frozen or are you just extremely still? I think David is frozen. David may need me
I think
to.
you've just entranced him with your conversation.
Well, so the funny thing is Matt is capable of extreme stillness. And that's why I was asking him which one it was. Because Matt has fooled me purposefully occasionally into thinking that he was frozen when he wasn't. But yeah, there are, just sending him a message in case somehow, I'm sure he knows, but on the off chance he doesn't know, I'm sending him a message to let him know he's frozen on my end. Yeah, he just looks like he's listening intently to what I have to say, not even blinking. What a good pose to freeze on. When you are doing, so BYU, I actually took some high school courses from as well because of health issues. I couldn't go to full days of classes. I don't remember what grade it was. It must have been 9th or 10th grade. But I basically didn't take some of my high school courses at the actual high school. I took some of them online, and it was actually through BYU that I did it. But I will say, it was like, I remember one at least was a math course, and it was just math. It wasn't like they fucked that up. I'm glad I didn't take any science courses, though my understanding is if you take biology at BYU, you get a standard biology thing because they do still have to meet certain accreditation requirements. But obviously there are lots of places where that culture and everything sort of seeps in and fucks with it all.
So we have to have national accreditation standards for like at age 16 and 18 and things, but below that there isn't any required standard that religious schools have to teach to. I'm assuming that's similar over there. Do you think there's ever going to be a point when that doesn't exist, where kids have to be taught things that we just know to be true?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I will say I don't want there to not be the option of homeschooling. I'm probably planning on homeschooling kids that I would have in the future in some way. However, not in the Mormon way. It would be actually a much better, more socialized version of homeschool. I have nieces that are homeschooled in this way, and they are clearly way smarter and more capable than their peers, the people their age who are going to school. But yeah, it's kind of, so the state will not force you to get a high school diploma or an equivalent, what's called a GED over here. They aren't going to force you to do so, but
we have to get ours.
By the state you do, or to be able to get any sort of job?
No, by the state you have to be taught to, I think it's now 18, and at 16 to 18 there are exams that are national exams.
Yeah, I think you have to prove that you are in some way, and by the way, by prove, it may literally just be say you are, or have them say you are. I think you have to demonstrate that you are giving your children access to education, and that if they aren't in school, you are giving them some alternative. I'm aware firsthand of friends whose siblings and such fell outside of the purview of that system. So it's not a very good system. I don't think, in different states you can emancipate at different ages. Obviously there are health exceptions and everything. So yeah, I don't know to what degree I would say the state I think the state requires children be in some way schooled, but it's not as though you have a hard time circumventing that if you want to put your children in some non-traditional education system, or you don't care for them to. But you do not have to the state will not mandate that you have a high school diploma or you have even a GED by the end, but over here, you are unlikely to find meaningful employment without at least a GED. And the GED is not terribly difficult to get. It's just a test basically that I think most people could pass if they had a C average by 10th grade or so. Maybe less, honestly, maybe lower. And you can also then just also get a GED book and just study the book well enough to pass it. And that doesn't take much either.
Wow.
Yep.
So I know you were saying you wouldn't want to get rid of the option for homeschooling, but do you think they would ever make it a standard?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, so most people who homeschool are going to end with the GED, and so the GED is some type of standard, but it's not state enforced that you must get a GED or a high school diploma, and then to get into college, you usually have to take 2 tests. One's called the ACT and one's called the SAT, and one could argue that most of schooling is. Public schooling isn't really preparing you for the world. It's preparing you to take the ACT or the SAT, because you don't learn how to do useful things like cook or pay taxes, like how those systems work at all. You just learn how A squared plus B squared equals never getting laid.
Can you guys hear me okay?
I sure do.
Can now.
Oh, beautiful.
Wonderful. Occasional echo of me, but not always. So it's not. I think it's only when you're fresh off talking and the mic's more active. Yeah, I think that's when it's coming through. Anyway, Faye, any other questions you had about religious schooling?
No.
No.
That was it.
It was good to hear from you again.
Much.
Thanks for calling.
Thank you, Faye. Yeah.
Thanks, Dave.
Bye, Faye. I'm curious. Would you? I guess, Dave. First of all, I have no idea if you've had kids.
No.
Would you? Do you ever wish you had? Because I'm teetering. I'm trying to decide. I'm 33.
Gotcha.
For the last 10 years, I've been sure I don't want kids, and then recently was like, I kind of do now.
Well,
And
I actually
your screen's gone
was
black.
sure that I would have. Oh dear. Let's see what it's saying here. Do you want to share your Wi-Fi password? Can you hear me at all?
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you.
Oh, okay. My phone's doing something weird, and let's see if we can get it to go away.
If the browser's not the active window, yeah, that's what happened. Okay, cool. You're good.
Here we go.
I see now.
Yeah, I assumed I would have kids, and then the longer I went without kids, the more it's like, hey, this is okay. And then there was a point where it's like, yeah, let's just pull the trigger on this and get a vasectomy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm probably not planning on having any biological kids. I definitely. Yeah, there's enough kids in the system, and they need parents. But I don't know.
True.
I sit around a lot and just think it'd be so great to have some free labor. No, I'm kidding. I mean, I will say there's been something about, as I've been getting better at woodworking and getting better tools for woodworking, there's been something about like not having a person to leave my tools to and teach, to the point that recently I was like, I showed my niece wood turning, like videos of people wood turning, and I was like, "Do you want? I'll show you how. I've got a lathe. If you want to come, like, you just want to share it with somebody in a familial way, in a pass along this knowledge kind of way. So it's it's an interesting thing. I know a lot of people, and a lot of people in my generation super don't want to have kids, which is actually it's a bummer, because it's mostly people who are ideologically on my side. And more children from our side would be a positive impact on society. That would be a positive thing.
I get it.
I'm not trying to say have kids just to own the conservatives, which people have accused me of in the past when I said something similar, because no one gives a fuck about nuance, because we're all assholes. But anyway, I do digress. Let's take more calls. What do you think?
Why not?
Marcy in Wyoming, my old stomping grounds. That's actually where I went to high school. Marcy, how you doing?
Hi. Nice to talk to you.
Have you ever met another person from Wyoming? There's only like 4 of us.
So people here.
What'd you say, Marcy?
There are like 5,000 people just in my town.
Wow, that's a huge Wyoming town. No, I'm kidding. I lived in Cheyenne, which well, never mind. We'll talk. I've lived in a couple places, but Cheyenne and Laramie were the main places. You know what's so funny is you said you said 5,000 people in your town?
Yeah.
Does your town begin with the letter B? You don't have to tell me more than that.
No, it's a T like Tom.
Oh, interesting. Oh, wait, is there
I'm not far from Cheyenne.
I was going to say, is it a destination? Is there a commercial with a song about it that ends with, we got a great holiday in?
No.
Totally lost
everything. They're on the other side of the state. I'm closer to Nebraska than I am to Cheyenne.
Okay. All right. Well, no worries. I mean, Cheyenne, by the way, is only 15 minutes away from Nebraska. It's real close. But you mean up north more?
No, I'm on the southeast corner.
Oh, interesting. When you first called, I thought maybe you were calling from Burns. But no.
I think that's 109 people or something.
It can't be that low. Okay, anyway, no one cares about Wyoming. Let's get to your topic. I'll talk to you about Wyoming all night, but let's do Mormonism.
Okay, yeah, David, I heard something the other day about Joseph Smith identified where the Garden of Eden was, and that the Mormon or Latter-day Saints Church still maintains this site. Could you talk more about that?
I could, and there's a lovely chapter in my book where not only does it pinpoint that Independence, Missouri is the site of the Garden of Eden, but it actually is also ground zero to where Jesus is coming back at the second coming. And the long story short, and it's a great story to read, but the property where this all happening on, the church lost it to one of these spin-off churches. So they don't own that spot anymore where Jesus is going to come back. They've surrounded it. They bought as much property as they can, but it's one of the Mormon spin-off churches that actually owns it, which is just too precious to me and hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that where
the Garden of Eden is? I couldn't say for sure. But I do have the exact address in the book somewhere. It's like Walnut Street and corner of something and something.
Back and look. Yeah.
Jackson County.
Yeah. I think that's right.
Jackson County, Missouri is where I grew up, understanding the Garden of Eden to be.
And you know what's weird about that? Actually, when you think about it, in his own book, he's got the Jews coming from the old world to the new world. So presumably the Garden of Eden is back over there where they all started from. That's one of those little contradictions that I don't hear brought up a lot. But
yeah, not a lot of logic in that book.
No.
Not a lot of logic going on. Not its strong suit. No.
It's lacking something.
It's lacking worldly wisdom.
It's the magic mushrooms or something.
Well, there are some theories about early church hallucinogenics.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've heard those.
Bryce Blankenagel about that, because he's done some really interesting work on Joseph and pharmacological adventures, let's say.
Yeah.
David, you want to do mushrooms together sometime? See what we come up with about Mormonism? Hell yeah.
I can only imagine that would be a beautiful, beautiful thing.
That sounds fun.
Right?
Yeah, start the next wave. Get us some money.
There you go.
Cash in. Anything else before we let you go, Marcy?
Nope, that's good. Thanks.
You have stumped me. So don't tell us here. Just send me a message. Send me like an email. I cannot figure out a southeastern town unless you mean, okay, so there was one other town I thought of, but I'm talking about clear up near like Huntley. You're not talking that north. Are you north of Cheyenne, but still southeast?
It's northeast of Cheyenne. We're called the Banana Belt. We're the Banana Belt.
Do you want me to not guess your town out loud because you don't want people to figure out where you are?
Fine. I'm the state director for American Atheists.
Okay, great.
Nice.
Okay, so the only
Thank
T
you for
name
your service, Marcy.
The only T name I could come up with was Torrington.
Yeah.
Oh, I nailed it. Fuck yeah.
Hey.
Oh God, we have two of the most ridiculous right-wing jerks as representative and senator. I am pretty damned active here.
I feel bad because in all honesty, when I left Wyoming, I stopped caring in a lot of ways about, I guess I did a couple of years ago do a video about, did you hear about the Eagle's Nest in Cheyenne having their We Shoot Queers t-shirts?
Oh, that's sweet.
I did a video covering that and basically pushing a call-in campaign to annoy the governor about it. But that's pretty much the last time. I feel bad because there's so much that needs to be done. And I'm glad there are people like you there. I think there was something about growing up as a closeted queer in Wyoming that as soon as I was gone, I was happy to pretend it doesn't exist anymore. I feel like
you're in good company. There are lots of ex-Wyomingites that are fabulous people. So
Yeah. Well, the implication there that I'm a fabulous person, I'll take and reject, but I appreciate that very much. It's nice of you.
Thanks
to say.
again, Marcy.
Right. Well,
Thanks,
We
Marcy.
love that you're
That
out
was
there
fun.
doing what you do.
Yeah, keep it up.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Also threw me off that Marcy did not call from a 307 area code. That's the entire state of Wyoming has one area code. It's 307. That's how small
Okay, we have
in
one
population the
more
state is.
minute on Wyoming-related topics, and we just ran out of time. Okay, I have to go next.
What is this
That's it for
anti-Wyoming sentiment? My goodness.
No, not anti. It's just there's a time and a place for it. And
You just sound like some sort of
we've used it up in a beautiful way. So
You
now
just sound like
let's
some
move on.
kind of Wyoming bigot. Anyway.
No. Nothing could be further from the truth.
You with your anti-Wyoming sentiment. No, Wyoming's a fucking garbage pail. Fucking. If we could yeet that thing into the sea, especially the east of it, the east half, like the Yellowstone part's nice. Anyway, this is more Wyoming stuff. Aron in Texas, you are on the line.
Hey, Jimmy.
What up?
Yeah. Hey, I got a question for you because you were in the Church of Mormon.
Yeah.
Did you know? Did you? I'm sure you must have maybe, but you knew people that were like kind of like just going through the motions, or maybe perhaps somebody close to you was like, "Hey, Jimmy, this is all bullshit," but we just kind of yada yada for whatever reason.
Yeah. So the actual true answer is no to the second one. On the first one, you have the understanding that there are people who are just going through the motions. But as long as they're doing that, as long as in the Mormon church to be going through the motions, you still have to give them 10% of your money. Otherwise you're in trouble. So going through the motions is sort of considered good. Like look, if you're not enthusiastic about it, if you don't even know if it's true, if you just go through the motions, you're still going to get celestial glory. So as long as my dad tried to tell me to go through the motions. Basically, he was like, look, even if you don't believe, you should behave as though you do believe. Because you'll be better off.
Make it the religion.
Exactly. Yeah. But nobody would have ever come to me and socially, no Mormon would go to another Mormon and say, hey man, I'm thinking this is all bullshit. That's not a thing you do. That would be, I would have narked. I would have told somebody's bishop. Like because that's the culture. Oh, so-and-so's having doubts. We better send the missionaries. The people who fall away are the people who stop showing up. And you pretty much don't think about them until the bishop sends you with the missionaries to guilt them into coming back. And usually at that point, they're like, nah, we're good. And you just go about your day and you forget they exist because now they're scum to you. That's pretty much it.
Okay, wow. Yeah, that's okay. You answered my question. That's what I was interested in.
Yeah. I'm glad you asked because that's a dark fucking topic that I don't get to address very often. It's fucking dark as hell.
But now Mormons don't shun people. They don't.
Go ahead.
They don't shun apostates the way the Jehovah's Witnesses do, though, do they?
Not by policy, but
Officially.
Often by culture. Yeah.
I think I cut you off, Aron. What were you going to say?
Oh no, that was it. I've only been listening to Jimmy for a short time now, and I was just I'm really interested in his story. So wanted to learn more about that because. And my history is not really, in and out of church a little bit. And my parents were basically like, I guess the best way I could describe them were lazy Christians because we didn't go to church and there were no Bibles.
Yeah.
But it was, you're going to go to hell and you got to do, he's making a list, you're checking it twice, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
For fear. So I kind of had like the fear thing from my parents. So I'm not familiar. But the short time I did go to church, I was like, I was kind of thinking this is bullshit, but nobody would talk about it. So I just felt like it was the elephant in the room. It was like, can we talk about this?
Yeah.
But him saying, Jimmy talking about the, you kind of have to go through the motions. Like, yeah, that's really what we were doing, even in Independent Baptist Church. So. But,
I was raised
cool.
Southern Baptist too, and I don't remember ever anybody admitting that in public either or in private.
But going through the motions, I will say the concept of going through the motions as a Mormon is different than almost every other religion. sort of like the things we already touched on, but also because Mormons have the concept of callings. Members get called, quote unquote, called to roles within the church. So the bishop is a member of the congregation, and usually when it's time to get a new bishop, 95% of the time they pick from the existing membership, maybe somebody who stands out. But then even beyond that, like you have counseling roles, you have teaching roles. They're being in charge of making sure that the church building gets cleaned every week is a quote unquote calling. You know, being a part of the primary or the nursery, there's lots of callings. And then on top of that, the bishop only gives a sermon, you could call it, or a talk is what they use in the church. They only gives a talk like once a year. Members give the talks each Sunday. So when you go to church, the first thing you go to is what's called sacrament meeting. And it starts with an opening prayer, then an opening hymn. Sometimes you reverse that order. First it's hymn, then prayer. I think actually it's usually that. Hymn, then prayer. Then the bishop gets up and he'll say things like, these are the events for the week that are coming up. Next, we're going to sing this song, and then we're going to take the sacrament. And so he doesn't give a sermon. He doesn't give a message. He just says, like, here's what we're doing. And so then you take the sacrament and you sing, and then there are usually 3 talks. And it's usually a talk from somebody who's like probably a youth or, you know, just some random member of the church. And then the next one might be somebody
sharing
with
their
a little
testimony or
no, usually they're given a topic and they're usually reading their talk.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so they'll be up there. Hi, today, today's my talk is on the importance of giving tithing. And it's, you know, usually people will end with their testimony, but I know what you're thinking of. You're thinking of the fast and testimony meeting. I'll hit that in a second, but,
sure.
It's Mormon open mic, but no, it's usually 3. And so usually it's just the first 2 talks are usually, it's like the first one's the least serious. It might be somebody who's only from the ages of 12 to 17. Or maybe it's somebody who's newer in the church or something. Then the next one's usually somebody who's a little bit, at least somebody with a calling. This might even be a woman. And then the final talk is almost always a priesthood holder, a man. And their talk is longer. It's on the deeper topic. They're usually somebody who's gone on a mission and does a higher level of like a lesson style of thing. This is where the sermons are. And that's all from the members. So when you're going through the motions and showing up at church once or twice a year, depending on the size of your ward, going through the motions includes the bishop coming and saying, hey, the Lord would like you to give a talk next Sunday in the first, second, or third slot on this topic. That's going through you have to give sermons to go through the motions in Mormonism. That's what's fucking crazy. And then the first Sunday of every month is fast and testimony meeting, where instead of those 3 talks, they do open mic. Anybody can get up and say how this week I got a discount on ice cream and that was God at work. Fuck all the orphans in Africa and fuck everybody who's dying of cancer. The Lord got me a coupon. That's what
Jimmy,
the first
can I
Sunday
tell you,
is.
Can I tell you, as an outsider, the 1 or 2 times that I ever went to a Mormon service, the thing that freaked me out the most was that everybody brought their babies with them, and babies were crying throughout the entire service. Blew my mind.
They like babies. They do not much like children with any sort of handicap that is disruptive, though. They're pretty douchey to parents of, why aren't you controlling your child with Down syndrome better? Oh, fucking assholes.
Dear.
Yeah. Anyway, Aaron, anything else? Any other shocker moments you'd like to be?
No, I'm exhausted just from that. So I want to let somebody else get on. But yeah, David, I'm going to check out your books for sure. Never heard of you until now, but I'll check your books out.
Hell yeah.
Please do. Thanks, Aaron.
Aaron, if you haven't seen my other channel, it's called Jimmy Snow. There is a video on there. If you sort by most popular, it's one of the top 5 called Escaping Mormonism, How and Why I Left, something like that. If you want a little bit of an extended story of me getting out of it.
Doing it right now, for sure.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
We'll do it after the show, but tight. Thanks, Aaron.
Well, right.
Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks.
See ya.
Bye.
Awesome call. Man, I could talk just about how fucking whack Mormon church is compared to everybody else's. That's just the first hour, by the way. I grew up, they just switched to a 2-hour block recently, where church is a 2-hour function. It was 3 when I was growing up. It was the first hour, it always went over by 15 minutes or so. But basically the first hour and 15 minutes are sacrament meeting. Then the next 45 would be Sunday school, and then the final hour would be gender specific, basically Sunday school. The men would go into one room and fillet each other, and I don't know what the women were doing in their room, but metaphorically fillet, for the record.
As a Southern Baptist, I was kind of freaked out that we had morning service, evening service on Sunday, Wednesday service. But Mormons, they blow us out of the water. You were like up at the crack of dawn every single damn day before you go to school.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. So it depends. First of all, for your Sunday services, you are assigned when you go. So if you're in a more populated area where one church hosts multiple what are called wards, those congregations are set by the district you're in. So as far as Sunday goes, you might be a part of the ward that goes to sacrament meeting at 9 a.m. You might be a part of the one that goes to sacrament meeting at 11 a.m. or 1 a.m. And those are the most common slats, 9, 11, 1. And then every year, when the new year rolls over, whoever was going at 1 p.m., now they go 9 a.m. and then 9 moves to 11 and 11 moves to 1. That's a common way that it all goes. Yeah. If you're in a place where the ward doesn't have anybody else in it, it's just the one, I think 10 a.m. is the usual start time. What you're talking about is just for high schoolers.
Weekday.
And it's only for kids in high schools, and it's called early morning seminary. However, that's only if your school will not allow you to take a period off to take seminary during school. So I did some years where I took early morning seminary, and I did 1 year where I took seminary at the same time that third period was. And the seminary building was literally across the road from the high school. I'd have to walk to seminary, and then you'd take seminary, and then you'd go back. Fucking awesome.
And then there's family
Everyday
fun
church,
night.
Right? Right. Yeah. That's at least not at church. And I feel like I would adopt something like what was called family home evening for my actual family. Like that's not a terrible idea. A night that's dedicated to like, hey, generally you don't make plans with your friends. You don't on these nights, we as a family do something. What the fuck is going on with my background back here?
I don't know, but I'm with you. I'm with you on that too. I think that's a pretty cool idea too.
Yeah. And but with us, it was like almost a hostage situation where it's like if you dare try to make a plan on that night, you are fucked. You are an evil. What would make you do something so evil as that? What is going on? Let's try that one. Let's see if is it just going to go to a white screen again. All right, so that's broken.
You're
dope.
You're in outer darkness now.
That's right.
It's all right.
That's right. Yeah. So as a high schooler, the way it ends up working out, if you're going to everything, it's 5 days a week. You're going to seminary. Plus on Wednesday evenings, that's Bob Ross.
Bob Ross is.
Get out of here, Bob Ross. On Wednesday evenings, I was trying to turn it on and off and see that fixed it. On Wednesday evenings, you would go to Boy Scouts for me, Mia Maids or whatever it was called for girls. And then about twice a month for youth, they would have a Saturday activity. And then you have every Sunday, which means that you are, except for two Saturdays a month, you are going to church in some way at least once every day. Yeah. Too much.
Which is crazy in hindsight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was kind of crazy back then too. There were definitely moments where I was like, I'm doing a lot of church. Y'all know I love church, but this is a lot. That's a lot of church.
There's a lot of church.
Anyway, let's
talk about. In the book, I talk about
the
missions and how, the object of the mission is not for the missionaries to knock on your door and convert you. The object of the mission is to have your missionaries double down on their service and instead of going out and, experimenting with drugs and sex, they're knocking on your door and doing missionary work.
Yeah,
and it's all about retention of the missionaries.
There's definitely something to that. I think it's both, for the record. I do think they get a lot of free labor out of missionaries. They get a lot of, there's definitely a level of, you're 18 years old, you're going out for 2 years right after high school. You've graduated high school and you're going either to a foreign country or somewhere in America where you're going to be doing stuff for the church. And in that 2 years, you're not going to be left alone. So you're going to have to figure out how to masturbate in the 5 minutes you're allotted to have a shower, because you're
or listen to the radio, know,
because you're not allowed to masturbate. So hopefully you get a cool companion who understands that that's what you're doing, and you both never talk about it to make sure that, because that's the kind of shit that happens. Otherwise, you might get a companion who keeps trying to catch you masturbating, so he can tell on you, because that's virtuous in the church.
Narc,
Yeah, literally, like, the talk says that this is war, and I have to keep you out of the masturbatory foxhole.
Should we talk about the dark closet of gay Mormonism for a minute, and how, for instance, Salt Lake City is literally been voted the gayest city in America?
Well, I didn't know that. I'm about to move to Salt Lake City. Oh, yeah. No one told me that.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah, I mean,
well, it's funny because I keep hearing Mormons talk about the big evil city because it's only half Mormon,
right?
In Utah.
I think it's down to a third Salt Lake. Provo's a university town, so you're gonna have a lot of young people, and you have people who have come on scholarships from different cultures and stuff, and so it's a lot of very loud and vocal Mormonism against loud and vocal counterculture in both places. They both have a really vibrant counterculture in Salt Lake City and Provo as well. Which is why if the line keeps going the way it's going, the momentum is sustained, and we can afford to do it. I'm trying to build some sort of community center here, and then the next place I try to do basically what I'm doing here with the line will probably be in the Provo area. I'll move to Utah and try and do a more ex-Mormon specific, but secular humanist stomping grounds. And that's, by the way, a good moment to mention our Patreon, patreon.com/calltheline, because that's the kind of stuff those contributions are going to. And we're about to have a meeting with all of our hosts to also sort of solidify, like, if you're a patron, this happens this periodically. You get to come to meetings with these people and blah, 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 blah. So all that's coming. So anyway, patreon.com/calltheline. It's a good time for me to remember to pose that. Let's knock out these last 3 calls and do the Q&A. Does that sound good to you? Are you on a time limit? How are you doing?
Awesome.
Cool.
We're good. I'm all yours.
Austin in Utah, you are on the line.
Hello, Jimmy and Dave.
Hello.
Hello, Austin. Can you tell us where in Utah you're out of?
I live in Orem, Utah. I was born in Provo, Utah, and I've lived in Orem, Utah for 47 years now.
Wow.
And I'm not a Mormon. Never have been. Been to lots of meetings, and, it's a great environment to be around, but I just don't believe it.
Right.
But I wanted to talk about
go on.
mixed faith relationships.
Sure.
So, in the pool that I swim around in, kind of, so to speak, everybody's Mormon. I've met...
and you're always the token Gentile?
I've been friends with some... Say again?
You're always the token Gentile when you go out?
Yes, but with the relationships, I have a friend that I've been friends with since we were both 18 for about 6 years, and we lost touch for about 20 years, and we've reconnected, and she's a 100% true believing Mormon, temple worker, everything. And I am not that, but we're really good friends.
That's awesome.
But we both feel a lot of things for each other, I think, but I don't think it's ever going to work. Is there a possibility that mixed faith relationships can work?
Probably not.
When they are so strong.
Probably not with Mormonism. So, Austin, the thing I got to tell you from a person from having been a member is she will be advised from the people she trusts the most not to date you. It is, you could almost say it's technically a policy not to, though it's clouded in a lot of stuff. But she is only supposed to entertain a romantic relationship with somebody with whom she could be married in the temple with. And you and her can never get married in the temple, period. There are no temple marriages with anything less than fully participating members of the church. It means you're paying your tithing, you're at least lying about never masturbating, you're not drinking coffee, you're not drinking alcohol, and you're sustaining your leaders is one of the things. You're basically saying the church is true and I support my leadership. There's no way. And so to be a quote unquote good participating Mormon, basically to date people who date outside of the church, outside of the covenant in the church, everyone in every ward knows who they are and they gossip about them. And you are culturally, if she stayed in the church to be with you, she will be culturally punished at church, as well as feeling a tremendous amount of guilt for breaking covenants.
Yeah. And as much as I like to say biology always trumps theology, when you've got a whole worldview and a whole highly controlled organization like that, that's a tall order. Yeah. It's a tall order.
And to Mormonism, because you live in Utah and you've been around it your whole life, you're not really just a random person. You either they think you are in an active state of they might win you, or you've rejected the church, which doesn't put you far away from being an anti-Mormon in their eyes. You've been exposed to it so much that you've actually turned down the church. It's not just that you just don't know or something. It's one of those things where if I was you, I would either, unless you think there's a chance that she'll leave the church behind, I'd probably advise you to move on romantically.
Yeah, that'd be the only reason. But I got to say, because of living in the middle of it my entire life, I do study it as a hobby.
Sure.
It's fun to learn. I'm right in the middle of it, Yeah. I showed up to church a few weeks ago for the first time in maybe 20 years, and I knew everybody there because they're all my neighbors.
Unfortunately for you, Austin, you don't even realize the psychological orgasm you gave all of them who suddenly went, he's here. We've got a shot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, definitely.
You're on the list now, just so you know.
Yeah, this friend of mine that I mentioned, I invited her to my church, my local ward, which I maybe have been there once 20 years ago, and it blew her away. She went, everybody, you don't go to church at all, but everybody knows you. And I went, yeah, they're my neighbors.
Yeah.
I'm not part of their religion, and they absolutely know that. But I'm welcomed there, and it was fun.
Well, everyone's welcome there as long as there's a chance. As long as they think there's a chance they're going to get you.
As long as there's a chance. I got to say, I love the fact that you're a lifelong non-Mormon, and you have a ward.
Yeah.
Austin, I got to say, I love the fact that you're...
I do have to say this.
Yeah.
You know what? I've lived in this neighborhood for a long time, and I love my neighbors, and I feel that they love me too. I sometimes wonder, though, what are they saying to themselves in their head about me because I am so different than them?
It'll depend on the Mormon and their devotion to Mormonism, and still how, even as adults, they've been isolated from real adult psychology and mindsets. My father somehow, despite the fact that he only lived in Utah to go to college, lived in New York, worked in tunnels, got to be around the rough and tough of everything in public school. Still, as an adult, it is clear he has insulated himself from participating in a level of intellectual reality that is usually a part of growing up, because he says things that are tremendously adolescent to even think. A couple of years ago, he blew my mind because he revealed to me that it was his impression that only Mormonism teaches you to have a personal relationship with Jesus. And I was like, the fuck? Wow. That's like their whole thing. All of them do that. What are you talking about? Personal revelation's only an aspect of Mormon. And so it'll depend on your member, because There will be people who actually like being your friend because it's an escape from Mormonism. My dad, despite being devastated when I was the first one to leave the church and trying to there were also these little elements of parts of his personality that came out that had never come out before and hadn't for my other siblings who subsequently left. My dad, if it was just him and I, started swearing, which was
wow.
We grew up with him bragging about how he never swears, even in the most intense moments. And then he's complaining to me about how annoying my mom is, which that's true. And swearing about it. And so they will take the opportunity to have someone with whom they can reveal a little bit of authenticity with, and then later shame themselves. Oh, that must have been Satan back when I was feeling like myself. But, some people will appreciate. There will be people who will have to be happy for you if you joined the church, who would internally hide their disappointment because they actually like about you that you're not a member.
That's funny.
It's wild stuff.
So one last point. They're visiting teachers and missionaries, and the local bishop is my friend, the local state presidency, and all these things. They're my friends and neighbors, right? And so when they come and visit, but are they really my friends, or are they just doing what they're told to do?
Again, so the higher up ones probably aren't. This is maybe me being a little bit harsh, but the community that Mormonism offers is inauthentic as fuck. It is
I see it.
It is something you are taught to do. That said, it doesn't mean that they are incapable of having authentic relationships with people. You'll just notice it less, the authenticity, when the theme of their visit is theology. When the stake president's there to ask you, well, what do you think about the afterlife? Whoa, what about families? What about being with your family?
I tell them what I think about it.
Yeah. By the way,
and I'm always respectful. If the missionaries come here, if the bishop, I'm always respectful and have a good conversation. But I absolutely tell them what I believe. And
Austin,
so
can you?
I'm kind of the odd duck of the neighborhood.
Do you think you could get that stake president to come on the show with me?
There you go.
He's been a longtime friend of mine, and I could talk to him about that.
Ask him if you would. Tell him we want to do a call-in show where we'll take calls. I'll give my perspective. I will do my absolute best. I think if I put my work into it, I won't slip. I'll do my absolute best to not swear during the episode. I won't visibly drink coffee in front of him, anything that would make him uncomfortable. I would accommodate his religion to have him on where we're in a split screen and we take calls and we don't necessarily fight each other. We just take calls with questions and people can evaluate for themselves the answer that the stake president gives to a question and the answer I give to a question. I would do it as fairly as I could. Oh man. There's a show I'm working on developing that's basically the format. But a stake president. Oh, would love it.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, I will certainly talk to him about that because I've known him since 2009, and he's been a wonderful friend of mine. We have great feelings for each other, and he was the bishop when I moved in here, and I would love to see that happen. I would love to see people of authority have a good conversation and answer questions.
I would too.
I've always said that living here where I live, it's a theocracy.
Yeah. Austin,
100%.
Will you email me how the conversation goes? Because I think he's going to tell you that the church wouldn't want him to do that. But email me how that goes, would you?
Yeah, I know the typical response that will receive.
Yeah.
So
see what you can do.
Yeah, but I'll let you know.
We'll offer the platform in total. It'll be as fair as one can fathom. Of course, our audience is biased, but they won't be treated with bias. We'll make sure that calls come in where some number of them. It's roughly equal to calls that would be more challenging for me versus calls that would be more challenging for him. I was going to say them, but it's the Mormon Church. All the stake presidents are hims. Yeah, Austin, if you'll...
I gotta say, I hate to see things with a bias in it. It's horrible. Good, honest conversation needs to be had. I'll certainly extend the invitation.
Sure. Thank you, Austin. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Jimmy and Dave.
Have a good one.
Thanks, Austin.
Oh, I hope that pans out. All right, I realize I have to explain something because there are people watching going, what the fuck is a stake president? Because why would they? You weren't ever a Mormon, but you know what a stake president is. It didn't even occur to me until this moment. Of course, people who are like, the fuck is this? All right, so here's how it works. You have a region, and we'll call it a small region. So let's just pick. So like imagine Denver. What town is everyone aware of that isn't ridiculous like New York? So just a place like Denver that has a million people in a smaller area. That area is going to be broken up into lots of little pieces. And so let's say Littleton is one of the suburbs of Denver, and Littleton even has a lot of people. So that might even be broken up into several. Every building that you see that says Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, all of them will have wards in them, including the stake centers, but we'll get there in a second. But, and so a region of people, if there's enough people, is called a ward, and there's physical boundaries. The people in this area are called a ward, and they try to cap that out.
It's not by population at all. It's strictly by area, you're saying.
Yes, but they limit it. So they don't want too many people. I think that the average ward, they're probably aiming for 300 to 500 people to make up the ward, so that roughly 100 to 200 people are showing up for sacrament meeting from that area. And so you've got a ward, and that's that geographical area. And that one ward is attending at a time the church building itself. But sometimes you have multiple wards in a single building if there's if you have to have multiple wards but in a sort of small space. So you have a place like Littleton might have 5 or 6 wards. Then you take multiple wards, and also trying to reach basically a certain population, you build a region that contains multiple wards. And that region is called a stake. So in Cheyenne, I went to a ward in Cheyenne, but there was like 7 other wards in Cheyenne. Cheyenne also had a stake, which included all the wards in Cheyenne, also included a couple of little satellite towns around Cheyenne, places like the aforementioned Burns. And that was the stake. But Laramie, which was a city just over from us, they had a different stake. But Denver has like 10 stakes. So it's not necessarily that a city by itself is a stake if there's a big enough population. So stakes are made up of multiple wards. And the leader of that stake is the stake president. And for most Mormons, that is the highest authority in the church that you will interact with any regularity. You might get to hear a talk from somebody above him, but 90% of Mormons, that's it. Like you're this guy at some point will interview you to do with going to the temple or maybe going on your mission. And this is a person who you'll actually probably interact with. And so basically a larger region's president, the person in charge, is the stake president. Bishops are the tops of wards.
Just below them.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
Basically a ward has a bishop.
This is more like a cardinal, let's say, for Mormonism.
Yeah, the cardinals are more like the 70, to tell you the truth, but I guess kind of. Yeah, because cardinals you don't really have access to either on an individual level. Whereas a stake president, like I would go to my stake president's house sometimes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like, I mean, part of that because of who my dad was, but also part of that because his wife was my seminary teacher. So like we had you could have a personal relationship of some type. And I still think very fondly about my stake president as a human and how compassionate he seemed. Obviously, there's the conflicting feelings of you still weren't great to queers. It seemed like they had the type of family that never yelled at each other, which was something I always admired. That was like the rule, no yelling.
You gotta love that.
Yeah.
This reminds me of two things I wanted to bring up earlier. When we were talking about gay Mormonism, I have a friend of mine who's a very strong former Mormon, and we keep having a running bet of when's there going to be a revelation that says, "Oh, I was all wrong. Gay, you can be a gay Mormon." She says it's never going to happen, but I don't know. I keep thinking it could happen.
She's definitely wrong because the church is going to have to do it to survive. When it will happen, the current generation, like Russell Nelson, Oakes, even through Bednar, there's no chance that any of them are going to have that revelation. But one of the younger crew, like Christofferson or something, who had the now reformed gay brother. That was his whole like, I'm the apostle with the ex-gay brother. And they've technically already had the quote unquote revelations. You can be a gay Mormon. You just have to deny yourself your gayness. Like you can be gay, you just can't do gay.
Exactly.
You can't entertain it. Yeah, you have to torture yourself basically. And deny yourself thoughts, not just deny yourself gay sex, deny yourself gay thoughts.
That's a fun way to live your whole life. Yay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The best.
Yeah.
But obviously it's something you can do because one of the apostles' brothers, after decades of being in a gay marriage, was able to, after, not pursue any additional sexual or romantic interests. So obviously anyone can.
Who knew?
Right, anyone can.
Knew?
After 30 years of a success of being able to express yourself sexually and romantically, he was able to, in his older age, not feel the need to continue to express himself that way. So clearly, anyone can do it at any time.
Clearly anyone can do it. Yeah.
So it'll be a slow march, and there will be changes over time and stuff. But I feel like the only reason why it wouldn't happen is something else kills the church first.
There you go.
And I don't think it would specifically be the queer issue that would kill the church first. But
let me hop to a different Mormon violence sort of issue, and this is one of the things that surprised me the most and took me by surprise when I was researching the Mormon book. Was Mormon and Utah is the fraud capital of America, and Mormon on Mormon fraud is a huge thing.
Yeah,
huge thing. It blew my mind.
Yeah,
I had no idea.
I'm just waiting for them to figure out how to make astrology a part of fucking Mormonism, because MLMs, the overlap of MLM people and deep astrology adherence is pretty significant too. A lot of people in MLMs who aren't Mormon are into astrology. There's a deep tie there.
And MLMs, for the audience, are multi-level marketing pyramid scheme.
Modern day pyramid schemes. Here's our product.
Yeah.
Now, the cool thing about our product is, fuck the product. You sign up 2 people, and then they sign up 2 people. But don't forget about the product, because that makes it not a pyramid scheme. But then also do forget. Anyway, sorry, a couple more calls. Let's just pop these. Let's pop these. Evan in Washington, you're on the line. Evan. I don't know
Can't hear Evan.
Sorry, Evan. Well, I'll read the screening thing, and we'll just address it. The screening note said the dark side of bishops, child abuse, and other horrible things they facilitate.
Ooh.
There's a lot of things we could talk about here, but the church is now having to catch up to catch up. They knew what was going on, but there were years of abuses happening, specifically in these worthiness interviews. They had a hotline specifically where if somebody abused the church, basically the church would answer this hotline and go, all right, what's our exposure on this? And they'd evaluate what legal resources were necessary to cover up basically sexual assaults and things happening at the hands of bishops. Bishops being in small rooms where you have outside of the door. This is every Mormon church I've ever been in has this thing. And my dad was a bishop, and so were I've been around a lot of bishops in my life. Outside of the door of the bishop's office, first of all, you have a door that is made of a heavier wood than almost any other door in the place because it's to stop sound from getting through. But on the off chance that sound could get through, there is a speaker mounted above the door which just plays white noise when you are interviewing somebody in there. So it was literally a system.
That's not at all Kafkaesque and creepy at all.
So their thing was, this is so that you couldn't listen to someone else confess their sins, that it stays just between you and the bishop. Which, fine, whatever.
Plausible.
Plausible. And then you just go like, what bad would happen? What unforeseen consequences of putting 14-year-old girls in a room with a man usually in his 30s or 40s, and that man is tasked with asking that 14-year-old girl about her masturbation and or sexual habits. At one time, you were having problems with them. Right. At one time, you had bishops going off script thinking that like maybe thongs were against the rules, against the laws of chastity.
So we better check.
So they're asking children about their underwear. They're asking, and then when people are, when the other problem that was happening is girls were getting these interviews about feeling terribly guilty for being sexually assaulted. For being sexually assaulted. And these bishops are asking things like, did you orgasm? Did you trying to find reasons in which they can actually say like, look, maybe your boyfriend, got too pushy and just went right past your boundaries and blah, blah, blah. But you have liability in this too. How were you dressed? What were you wearing? Did you get wet? Did you orgasm? And there's this guy, Sam, what was Sam's last name? I want to say Sam Smith, but Sam Smith is the singer. Sam something. If on my channel, Jimmy Snow, if you look for the video called Protect LDS Children, we talk about Sam and these specific 29, I think it was, questions, which are reported by like almost every girl who's ever had an interview has said, yes, they would ask this and this.
Line of questioning.
And they made the list of 29. It wasn't just the ones directed toward girls, also boys, but the list of 29 extremely common abusive questions that you're having adults cornering a child about. Fucking dark as fuck. Yeah,
I tell you. And it's like, just when you think that, religion's okay, everyone believe what you want, you have to remember this is the kind of shit that goes on in religions. And, it goes on other places too. But like John Stewart said, if any other organization did what the Catholic Church did, they'd be done, And I can't think of any mainstream religion, Protestant, Catholic, fill in the blank, that doesn't have a scandal or two like this. And usually it's at the upper levels trying to hush it all up and make it go away.
There was my father had modeled, there's a specific stake president that my father always wanted to basically be like and raise his kids the way he raised his kids. And so there was this standard of like President so-and-so, like, in their family this and whatever. And we do it like this. And it was because of him that we're reading Book of Mormon every day. Like anyway, his son ended up becoming the mission president, where he would rape the sister missionaries that he was responsible for. So definitely, Dad, raise us that way, you asshole. Fucking
don't get me started. Don't get me started.
I got stories. Okay, but you're quite right. We'll move right along. And we're gonna talk to Mark in Wisconsin. Mark in Wisconsin, you are on the line.
Hi, Jimmy and David. So I've been relatively active in the Masonic fraternity for about 20 years, and I've been fascinated with Mormonism for some time. I find it just fascinating. But my understanding is that Joseph Smith was exposed to Freemasonry, and that there's Masonic rituals as part of the religion. Jimmy, so what you went through as working your way up as a child into the religion, that there was some ritual that you had to go through that correlates to Freemasonry? And I'm really interested in what you can say to that.
Short answer: big time, big time.
Yeah. So the funny thing is, I'm one of the few people asking this about. I can only tell you, like David and I probably can tell you the same answers because I did very few of the rituals which were Masonic. There is Masonic imagery around me plenty, but I never did my temple endowments, for example. So I didn't do all the symbols about whatever. I didn't learn the handshakes to get into heaven. I mean, I have since then. You can just find them. But, you know, the handshakes to get into heaven, the passwords to get into heavens. Joseph Smith wasn't just exposed to Freemasonry. He was a practicing Freemason. He wore a ring with a black oval, which was apparently some symbol of Masonry somehow. I don't know what the significance is.
When he died, his literal last words were a Masonic cry for help.
Yeah, trying to call the Masons that were around him. Yeah. And to tell you the truth, it's really funny because I've read some of this stuff. I've heard about some of this stuff. Fundamentally, I don't know enough about Masonry to tell you much either. Like I understand they used to maybe run the world or something. They were like the old Illuminati, but now they're just a bunch of, you know, meeting houses where people are like, wasn't it great back when we could pull off a conspiracy? But fuck, I don't know, Mark. You tell me.
Yeah. It's all lore. Yeah. They try to connect it to the Knights Templars and all that, but it's just lore.
Yeah. So like I said, I'm pretty Mason ignorant. I just know that they're, you know, I every now and then a QAnon person will bring them up.
Yeah. It seemed like the 17th century to the 19th century was kind of their heyday in certain circles, but who knows?
Yeah. So
maybe that's just what they want you to think.
Temple rituals are clearly have very, I know, like clear parodies of Mason rituals. But even like baptisms for the dead, I couldn't tell you if any of the imagery. I think some of the like almost Star of David looking stars, but they maybe are 8-pointed stars or something. I don't know. There was some stuff around that I remember hearing that was from Masons, and like having the baptismal fonts on the back of a bunch of brass ox might be Masonic. There's some weird shit like that.
Yeah, I talk about that in the book and some of the chapters off the top of my head. One thing I do remember very well is the temple endowments, the magic underwear of Mormonism. Those symbols that they stitch into it come straight from Freemasonry.
Very disappointing symbols, by the way. But yeah, it's like like one's like just an L, and then the other's like a V, and then the other's just a line. It's people are expecting all these amazing symbols on the magic underwear, and at first they think the things that are the symbols are places where the underwear was repaired, because it just looks like they had to fix a little cut. Yeah, real disappointing.
Yeah, I was very disappointed by the secret names that Mormons give their wives to get into heaven. I thought the names were very uninspired.
Well, and I don't know if you know this, but they're issued by the date. So and everybody who went through the temple today and got their heavenly name either got, if they were a man, they got the man name. So let's say today's name was Moriankamer, or something stupid like that.
It's more like, Martha or Wilma, or, it's just lame ass name.
Yeah. Mark, Adam, Michael. Yeah. So, there's multiple Michael days. Today was probably a Michael day. Everybody went through the temple today would have gotten a name like Michael, who was a man, and all the women would have gotten something like Sarah. And then the men get to know their wives' names so that they can call them in heaven, but the wives do not get to know the men's names.
Exactly.
Unless
and
the man
if you don't
wants
tell
to.
the wife's name, she can't go into heaven. Sorry.
If you don't call on her, she might end up as somebody else's celestial wife, but she ain't gonna be yours. You better not forget her name. Anyway, Mark, y'all the Illuminati or what?
Part. What?
I would say that's unlikely.
Oh, okay. What Mark?
So the Illuminati were the enlightened people, the educated people, the people that were questioning the church back in the 1400s or whenever Galileo was around, and they had to keep in a secret their thoughts there because they would have been executed by the Catholic Church.
So what's the current day benefit of being a Freemason, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, you'll find that a lot of members are ex-military, so there's a lot of that camaraderie, that place, the men's club that a lot of guys get out of it. And what's kind of interesting is now, I mean, I'm an atheist. I've been involved for like 20 years. When I joined, you have to profess a belief in God to become a Freemason. But I've since changed on that, and it's tough. You know, I do have to kind of do backflips to be able to sit in lodge and participate in some of the rituals and stuff and make it work for me. But I am able to, and it's the people, right? It's your brothers.
It's a social club.
I enjoy. And, it's a social club.
But you don't rig the Oscars.
No.
All right. Well, that's a bummer. I was wanting an Oscar.
We can't even agree on what to have for dinner.
There's people referencing the Stonecutters episode of The Simpsons. Is that considered highly offensive at the Freemason Temple?
What's that again?
The episode of The Simpsons about the Stonecutters. Does that offend Freemasons?
Probably not. We don't take it that seriously. I'll have to go back and watch it though.
Who keeps the Martians under wraps? We do. That's right. We do. People are putting some of the lyrics in chat. Anyway, that's a great episode. Yeah. Mark, it's a topic. If you ever want to check it out, is it in the CES letter, the Mason stuff? I'm trying to remember.
Oh.
Have you read it?
Probably.
You've read it, right?
Probably.
I think it is.
I have not, but I've been told I should read, and I agree I should. But it would not surprise me at all if they bring that up.
Here, you and Mark vamp for a second. I've got like 10 of them in the room next to mine.
Oh, nice. You got to send me one. Yeah. So what he's talking about, the CES letter, is this letter that spelled out like this one of Apostate's biggest problems with Mormonism. It's like, this is why I don't think Mormonism is true. And the list just goes on and on and on and on and on. Yeah. And it very much surprised me if the fact that Joseph Smith stole so many rituals and iconography from Masonry, it'd be very surprising if that wasn't on there at some point.
Let's see here. Book of Mormon, First Vision, Baby Abraham, Polygamy, Prophets, Kindred Plates, Testimony, Spiritual Witness, Priest of Restoration, Witnesses, Temples, and Freemasonry is on.
There we go.
So if you pull up the CES letter, page 115, there's a few pages of it talking about the temples and Freemasonry. And the because of their Masonic characters, the ceremonies of the temple are sacred and not for the public, which was apparently a message from the first presidency in 1911. But yeah, there's a couple of pages if you want to check that out. Look at this. This is them doing one of the secret handshakes to get into heaven, but it looks like just two dudes making out. That's what I came for. Anyway, Mark, check out page 114 of the CES letter.
And actually, check out my book on Mormonism, because I do talk about the Freemasonry bit too. Apparently, Joseph Smith basically formed his own lodge, made himself the president. He promoted himself, 30 levels in a day or something ridiculous like that. So it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, all right, Mark. Picture you're showing up on the screen is definitely Masonic imagery of where secret tokens are being exchanged between two brothers.
Yeah, so that's they call them signs and tokens as well in the church, and they instead of being between two brothers, it's between you and the basically the heaven concierge, the doorman in heaven. It's how you get into heaven.
The heaven concierge. I like that.
So I got a heads up. All right,
check it out. Awesome. Thanks, Mark.
So you got that going for you.
Take care, guys.
Thanks, Mark.
Later.
Right. See ya.
David, I'll tell you, this takes 2 hours. You could run through this thing, maybe 3. It's not a long read.
I had to grab a copy of that because that is so much bigger than I thought it was. Yeah.
Yeah. It's free. You can get the PDF for free online. This is, if you want to order the book itself, I think it's $10. to order it.
I may have to do that.
And like
you
the
were
pages,
asking, what would I do about? What do I want to add to the book, The Mormons? That whole book should just be part 2 of the book, because I think that looks like a gold mine.
I don't know if Jeremy Reynolds doesn't like me, which that happens. Like there are people out there who just don't like me since I've come out. No. But all I know is I have tried to get a hold of him on a couple of different occasions, including by buying 10 of these. Wow. To and he basically he was like, oh, I'm gonna send him out and I'll sign him, and then he didn't sign him. But he's like big order, thank you, I'll sign him and send him out. And anyway, I sent him because he wants the resource available for free, so it's free in PDF form. And there's been an audiobook version of it supposed to have been coming for years. And then also, I think it would be useful to have a video version of it that has all the illustrations and animations. And I basically reached out a couple times and I'm like, Jeremy, I will do it for free. I will take $0. I will make the videos. I will make the audiobook. I will do all of it just because I think the resource should exist, and I can never get a response on it. And so I don't want to presume to do it and just do it, but I think it's a very useful resource to have, but I can't get Jeremy to notice me.
Don't give up. Maybe he's just busy or what. Who knows?
I just assume he doesn't like me, which is fine. I don't take that personally. There are lots of people out there who don't.
How could that be? How could that be? I don't understand.
I'm abrasive as hell. I'm abrasive as hell. I don't, I'm quite the abrasive young man. There are plenty of people who don't like me. I don't know. I don't know what it is.
Shut up for a minute, Jimmy. Shut up for a minute.
I would just.
Hey, do we got any more questions?
No.
Callers online.
We've just got. We have no more callers. We just got the chats to go through at the end. I just think it would be a super useful research source. So, Jeremy, if this is finally the time somebody like gets hold of you, is like, hey, this guy thinks he hates you, but he's willing to do all that work for you for free and publish it in places that'll get a lot of views.
There you go.
Home slice.
For what it's worth, I can vouch for him, Jeremy.
Do you know Jeremy?
I don't.
As
far as I know, I don't.
The thing is Jeremy and I have a ton of friends in common. So when I say I've tried, I have been vouched for and still haven't somehow gotten the call back.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
well,
whatever.
Who knows? We could speculate all day, but who knows at the end of the day.
Jeremy, if you want, I'll get one of our mutual friends to do it. The voices and the stuff. If you specifically don't want my voice on it, fine. Just tell me, give me the goddamn permission to make the fucking resource. Or we just keep waiting forever. Anyway,
just do it on your own, and then you'll know how he feels about it. Yeah.
Well, that's sort of a violation of copyright. I don't know if this is copywritten, but it's sort of like to literally just read the book with the corresponding graphics playing on the screen. I'm not trying to put my face on it at all. I don't know. I think that would be a violation.
And here's what I think I would say, and we're way off topic, but here we are. Make a YouTube, do like a page or section a day, and at the end of it say, if you want more, here's how you buy the book from Jeremy, blah blah blah, and and make it clear that you're not doing it for the money, you're doing it just to spread the love, and see what he says.
Oh, word. At the end, though, it's got a Creative Commons thing. You can share, distribute, alter, and build upon this work so long as you respect the following. Don't put Jeremy Reynolds or CES Letter or letter. Okay, so the thing is that if I can't even call it the CES Letter, it would eliminate the point of making the thing. So that doesn't really work.
Well, there's probably a workaround. We can talk later. I have a thought or two. But
anyway, let's do Super Chats. And
let's do Super Chats.
Get over my lamenting of...
I just want to set ground rules. No Wyoming-based Super Chats.
No, only send several Wyoming-based. Send them. He doesn't set the rules here. I do.
It's a fair cop. All right.
Look, dude, someone wants to pay me to answer a question. I'm gonna do it. But I appreciate it if you'd stick around for the Wyoming ones too.
You're not wrong.
By the way, feel free to send us money for Wyoming questions. I won't be able to answer many. It's not like I know that much Wyoming trivia. I'm like, I don't know that much about who learns about the state they live in. Anyway, 1999 from the Mythic Life. Exactly what day of the year was Jesus born, and what day did he die?
Oh, I can answer that. And ironically enough, me and several other mythicists were having this very discussion today about how in ancient Christian sources there are all these different dates for Jesus' birth, not just the 25th, but in February and March. There's like 5 or 6 of these that were floating around. But of course, the real answer is that he was never born and never died because he's a fictional character, and you have to be real for that to happen. Long story short.
Yeah.
Hashtag just saying. Just saying.
In Mormonism, he was born on April 6th.
Thank you. Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, hard
I did
date.
not know that.
April 6th. Yep.
How did I know? Where did they get that date from? That's fascinating.
At some point, Joseph, I think, gave it as a revelation. Let's see if I can find.
Just to fuck with the other Christians, I imagine. Yeah. So is there a Mormon Christmas done on April? In April?
No, it's
April
pretty much
6th,
ignored. That like they still just do Christmas and Easter on those days, and then on April 6th they might be like, "Don't forget, this was Jesus." But what we really care about is
the real reason
I feel like
for the
Joseph
season.
Smith's birthday is a bigger day than April 6th.
That's funny. That's funny. Do they think he died on the same day as all the other Christians on Passover and Easter?
That's a good question, and I don't remember. Yeah. What day was Joseph Smith born? June 27th. I knew that off the top of my head. I don't know why I had to look it up. Let's see. What day was Jesus killed according to Mormonism? I don't know if that one has a specific date.
And it depends which gospel you're at too, because the dates don't line up. So between the Synoptic Gospels and John's Gospel. Yeah.
I mean, the first resource I'm finding is claiming that he died on his birthday. On April 6th, 30
Jesus?
AD. Yeah.
Okay, that's funny. And I think there are other early Christians who had a similar theory about that it lined up very neatly.
Apparently.
But that's funny. I didn't know that caught on with Joseph Smith. That's funny.
Orson Pratt, the previous apostle, had said April 6th, 30 AD. So
there you go.
Terrible birthday. Bad birthday weekend.
Yeah.
And then let's see. One of the revelations from Joseph Smith Jr. was April 6th.
Interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. If they had an encyclopedia of all the ongoing changes and doctrines of Mormonism, that would be a monster for starters. But it'd be fascinating to see how, like when you read the Book of Mormon, there's clearly a Protestant 19th century guy writing this. And then it gets off into polygamy and all the other stuff, But in the early days, they're hard to separate them out from the other evil Protestant churches that they're all telling us are corrupt and evil.
Yeah. Are you
basically?
Any chance of you being there this Sunday for Joseph Smith?
Probably not. I lucked out because I had COVID, so I was staying home But most weekends I'm working.
Lucky.
At the museum.
Yeah, I got you.
Lucky.
This Sunday we're doing the chapter that ends with the word adieu.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Classic.
Yeah.
Classic.
Adieu is in the Book of Mormon. Jacob in 600 BC says adieu. Fucking stupid.
Oh, but no, Jimmy. You see, it's really was translated blah, 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 blah. Explain away. Hand waving. Yes. Yeah.
The Raven 200, excuse me. I mean, the Lord apparently saw the need to use a type of what was then being used as English slang, like a lot of people were saying adieu there, to use that parallel thing, but didn't then see further into the future to realize we shouldn't use that word because everyone's going to point out how stupid it is.
Not only that, but if you've ever seen a first edition of the Book of Mormon, holy crap, the grammatical typos, and he went
no
to
punctuation.
It's just hillbilly, goofy. It's goofiness.
How could you say that he came up with that all by himself? You're like, this book sucks. First of all, he did steal a bunch of it. Like, he isn't the solo mind behind it. They didn't necessarily write it. Like, it's not like the first thought they had. The thing was planned. Like, when we say it was a con, we mean a fucking con. But also,
and here's the thing. It wasn't planned that great. They were making it up as they go along. And here's the thing.
Let me just make it up as it goes along. There's definitely some sort of outline they had in mind, and like parallels of here's what story we're going to steal and here's what. Yeah.
But, yeah, that's true. And we actually have the handwritten notes when you see the changes in his own handwriting.
Yeah.
But what really blows my mind is like for the first 10 to 15, 20 years or so, the Mormons, they didn't hear any of the stories that we all hear right out of the gate about, and I met Jesus and God, and they didn't know any of that.
Yeah.
It blows my mind how he was able to start this church that was so different when all the things that we use as the mainstream bedrock just hadn't been solidified yet.
The first vision is the first story the Mormons tell you when they're trying to convert you.
Yeah.
And Joseph recounted it completely with completely contradictory details at least 4 times, and apparently didn't bother to write about it himself with in his own hands until over a decade later.
Yeah, exactly. Well over a decade later. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the beauty is we have his chapter book where he has written some of his first editions, and you can see the corrections he makes. Pillar of fire. No. Pillar of light. And his name was Nephi. No, I already used Nephi. It was Mormon or Morona,
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't even start as being Jesus and God, but that's the one that he ends on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is the thing about
insane.
Mormonism that's so beautiful, that we have all the smoking guns for it that we don't have for Christianity or Islam or all the other bullshit religions that are also made up.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Raven 200 says, and it came to pass that I, Raven, told Jimmy, go fuck yourself and have a nice day. Thanks, Raven. Thank you.
Tell it again.
$5 from James Call in northeastern Nevada. We always had the joke that BYU meant bring them young, bring them horny. So I think you mean not that BYU meant that, but that Brigham Young's name was actually bring them young. Because that makes more sense to me. But anyway, bring them young, bring them horny. A lot of pregnant virgins in Utah. Yeah. A lot of pregnant virgins in Utah, indeed.
Yeah. Yep.
We had only tried soaking. Maybe I got pregnant from the toilet seat. 1999
from... You got to explain to the crowd what soaking is, I'm thinking.
I never soaked, and I don't even know that many individual people actually end up soaking. I think they probably maybe think about it and then they just end up fucking. But soaking, for people who don't know, it's where you don't have sex. You just put the penis in the vagina and you just hold it there and you hold it still. And
Nobody
then
move. Unless you have a friend at the
sin.
bed with you who can jump up and down on the bed, that's permitted too.
But then you're not thrusting. No, none of that's permitted. By the way, none of those loopholes actually hold up in Mormon court.
Right, yes, exactly true. Yeah. And yet, somebody invented this stuff. So, This is the mental gymnastics that are going on in Mormonism.
I did a solid year or 2 of oral and hand stuff before I just was like, what's the goddamn difference? Thinking that somehow there was a difference. That somehow, that would be bad, but at least I'm not fucking. Well, anyway. The Mythic Life says, how is Jesus like the angel Moroni, and how is the Apostle Paul like Joseph Smith?
That is a good analogy. Jesus and Moroni are very similar in that they're both fictional foundation figures. And the book I'm working on right now at the moment makes the argument, among other things, that if you look at all the top 10 religions that we have in the world today, every single one of their founder figures has got a very dodgy backstory, where to the point where it would not surprise me at all if Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, all those guys did not exist, never existed at all. And that's, in fact, the argument I make in the book. Apostle Paul and Joseph Smith, one thing about Joseph Smith you can say for sure is that he was a con artist and he had all kinds of ulterior motives. Apostle Paul was a big freak, don't get me wrong, but I don't know that he was not a deluded, believed it in his heart freak.
Sure.
He was a very troubled individual. But, I mean, when push comes to shove, they're saying crazy stuff that's not true. And it's like, at some point, it doesn't matter whether he really believes it in his heart or not,
Yeah. The stories are different, too. Like, I get a person going like, oh, Jesus showed himself to Paul or angels or whatever. And same thing happens to Joseph. But the whole backstory with Joseph is the idea that he was a youthful person who was already a pretty righteous child. And was as a child genuinely tormented by not knowing which church was true and that it was his pursuit of the true church that God chose him to be the person who would restore the whole thing.
And it just so happens that period overlaps when he's convicted as a con artist.
Yeah. I'm surprised he doesn't have some similar thing though. From now on, you will instead be known as Posif or something, right? Like that part of the story never made any sense to me. Like, why would you need to change your name? Wouldn't it actually be better to keep the old name? Be like, hey guys, remember me? Right? Saul the asshole? Well, now I'm Saul the apostle. It sounds very similar, but
another difference between Paul and Joseph is we've got all the receipts for Joseph Smith. They've had 2,000 years to scrub off the serial numbers for Paul and company. Yeah. And so there's a lot. And fun fact, Paul never tells us that story about meeting Jesus. He loves talking about himself, loves talking about his credentials. He never tells us that anything remotely like that once, ever.
Oh, I didn't know that. I don't know where those stories all come from. I'm not a historian, though.
It all comes from Luke. Luke in Acts gives it 3 different contradictory versions of that story.
But
that's another show.
Anymore, I just reference Tim Minchin lyrics anymore. I'm done with the Bible now. Then like Saul on the Damascus road, you sent a messenger to me, and so. Anyway, Elect Base 100 says, "Hi David, looking like you could be a cousin of journalist Richard Engel. We'll watch back the show later. First time I've said this to someone. Go fuck yourself, Jimmy." Joel.
Joel. That's his kryptonite name. Kryptonian name.
Yeah.
I like it.
Hell yeah. It's good stuff. Jake Nelson says, have to pop over to Dapper Stream. Jimmy, the new haircut is fire. Also, go fuck yourself. Love the show. So I was totally bald back at the beginning of February. I don't remember when I did it. I shaved my head all the way to bald and shaved the sides of my beards off. I was doing a Matt Dillahunty cosplay thing for having reached a patron goal. And so that's
nice.
That's what the haircut is. I actually wish it would grow a little faster, and I didn't realize I have this weird check mark shape when it's this short. I don't know. It's not even. The point, I've got like a widow's peak, but the point of my widow's peak is like over my eye instead of over the center.
Interesting. It's like an eye patch wannabe. Eventually it'll grow down and you'll look like a pirate, but for now.
Yeah. It's weird shit. But anyway, thank you, Jake. Jeff Cochran says, David, did you have a chance to read Park's book, Kingdom of Nauvoo? Which, that's not how you spell Nauvoo, but if so, what was your impression?
Honestly, I have not. There's plenty of books out there I have not read, and plenty that I have read, but that's not one of them, unfortunately. Unless I read it and forgot that I read it and cited it, but yeah.
For future, Jeff, just so you know, Nauvoo, it might have been a typo, but there's a U between the A. The I is a U, Nauvoo, Nauvoo is. And another fun little fact, the Nauvoo temple was in I think it was the follow-up, maybe not the original, but it was in one of the Oregon Trail games.
Oh, really? That's cool.
It was in the backdrop. You were in Nauvoo. Yeah, you're doing the Oregon Trail. I mean, the Oregon Trail in general, you figure that probably there's probably some Mormonism wove into it from the pioneers. I don't know, whatever. The Raven 200, Azaras Metrion Zinzos, my favorite DC heroine. I thought I was casting a spell.
I kind of did too, yeah. Is that a Zatara thing? I don't know what that is. Yeah.
I don't know.
I'll have to look it up. It sounded kind of Lovecraftian to me.
Yeah. Bryn KC says, Wyoming trivia, Nellie Ross, the first woman elected as a state governor in the U.S. You're welcome. Yeah, so Wyoming gets credit. Wyoming calls itself the equality state, despite the fact that they've just run a bunch of anti-abortion and anti-trans legislation. But they call themselves the equality state because they were the first state to give the vote to women. What they don't bring up was they had to be a state because their population was so small that to get representation, they needed more people. It was literally an act of survival and necessity. And this thing which they want you to think.
Where women are temporarily useful.
Yeah, it fucking, if anything, I wouldn't be surprised if they'd take the vote away now if they could.
Right.
Those uppity women.
You had me, then you lost me, Wyoming.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that kind of shit where you're like, there's always some. By the way, this may be the last super chat. If you want the show to keep going on, you want us to answer more questions, send in your super chats now of $5 or more. Otherwise, the show will be ending momentarily. But there's a lot of stuff
and
like
it needs
that.
to because Mrs. Dave is giving me hint signals like, I'm so hungry. When's dinner?
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, but
ready to
get
go.
Those chats in now.
Yeah. We'll make it quick then for sure. Yeah, it is interesting how many things there are out there that you take as like, oh, here's a thing I knew about history, and then you find out just something else. I didn't know until a show with Bryce on Orange Channel that the Hans Mill Massacre story is basically just Mormon propaganda, that it's all bullshit.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
That
I was today old when I heard
not that the story didn't happen. I'd rather have him explain it because I'll fuck it up. But no children.
Details.
No children were killed. There was a battle between some people that was provoked by the Mormons, and people did die in that battle, and they've turned it into a thing. Anyway, I'd have to let him tell it and his sources and stuff. But yeah, it's pretty wild.
We got to give a shout out. We got to give a quick shout out to Bryce Blankenagel, Naked Mormonism, or the Myth Vision podcast we did together. That man is an encyclopedia of Mormonism. Everything you wanted to know.
Yeah, his brain annoys me. It's better than mine.
Hey, Raven, we missed a super chat from Raven that was saying lovely things about me that I was hoping you'd say out loud it so I could hear it in my head.
I didn't see. Hang on, let me find it because I've got
one more.
I got Raven 200 said butts. And then
it's better than that. It was like,
before that was
David Fitzgerald's so smart, and it's awesome to have him here, and we love him. Or at least that's the way I heard it in my head. My God. Yeah.
Oh, I found it.
Anyway.
No, I found it. I'll go back to it.
Go back to it.
It's
don't let the hecklers from the audience behind me stop you.
Really?
Yes, Nellie Ross, first woman elected governor. Yes, that is true.
Let's see. It's so great having David Fitzgerald on the line. Yes. Really smart and dope dude. Oh, and Jimmy's there too.
Yes, hearing that from your voice makes it all better. Thank you, Raven 200.
I mean, isn't my bringing you on and the endorsement that implies the compliment in and of it itself?
You would think so, but I guess the super chat has spoken.
And yet
here we are.
I'm the guy who invites everyone to tell me to go fuck myself because that's much more comfortable for me.
It is a paradox.
Yeah.
That's
Jamie,
your love language.
No, it's just more of, at least I got a chuckle. Compliments just make me uncomfortable. Jamie J says, Cannibal the musical quote, Polly, you made it to Wyoming, right? Packer, yeah, but I would have been better off just letting those people catch me and kill me. Polly, why? Packer, you ever been to Wyoming? Laramie's actually an awesome town. I would live in Laramie again. Probably.
Cannibal the musical.
Yeah. Wyoming, the culture in Wyoming is dog shit. The people in Wyoming, it's like 80% dog shit. It's
except for that northeast corner where some awesome atheists out there doing God's good work in there. Yeah.
Look, there are individual people there who are great, but Wyoming as a whole, and not only that, you get a lot of towns like Cheyenne, which is this black hole of mediocrity, less than mediocrity. It's of just don't dare have people will shit on you for having ambitions and goals, and then you escape and you realize there's cultures out there and there's things to learn out there, and you can go and live a life and expand your mind. And if you ever express that, you get people in your comments on Facebook like, oh, here's another person who escaped Cheyenne and now is acting like, or who left Cheyenne is now acting like they escaped something by the skin of their teeth. And I'm sitting there like, fuck yeah, I am. That place is garbage, and I became a better person because I left it. Fucking garbage.
Thank goodness
place.
For the internet. For all the problems and downsides of the internet, it makes places like Wyoming bearable, at least on some level. Hey,
Cheyenne, Wyoming sucks. I said it.
One super. My phone is giving me a low battery thing, so if I disappear, it's not that I don't love you guys. That happens.
We're almost done too. There's only this and one more, but as long as no others come in. Nuzzy D says, thank you for your research and work. Do you have any Torah/Old Testament specific resources? As a former Reformed Jew, I love hearing about Mormonism.
Yay. Toda Rabbah, Nuzzy D. I'm hoping that the book that I'm working on right now, it's called Playing God, An Evolutionary History of World Religions, is going to be that book for you, that resource, especially for the Torah and the Hebrew Bible / Old Testament. It blows my mind the what's happening right now in Judaism studies. I don't know if you know who Jonathan Adler is. He's a Tel Aviv archaeologist, but it dovetails so wonderfully with what I'm coming up with in my book. He's arguing that archaeologically, we don't have evidence for Judaism before like the mid 3rd century, 2nd century BC. It's like all this stuff is so much younger than we ever thought, and it blows my mind. And I hope to have that book out by either this late spring or summer, sometime this year for sure. And I hope you'll get a chance to read it, because I think you'll love it. I think it'll blow your mind as much as it blows mine.
If I can just add one book to the list of get David's book, but then also friend of the channel, constant guest, Dr. Joshua Bowen has also written the Atheist Handbook to the Old Testament, which would be a good one.
Absolutely.
Check that
2
out.
volumes, awesome stuff. Yeah.
Hell yeah. Katarina Roach says Nevada has voting in its constitution, 1864. Nevada has voting in its constitution, 1864. I assume this is...
You mean female suffrage voting?
Yeah, maybe women voting.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Nevada.
Well, I've misjudged you, Nevada.
Voting.
That is good to know.
It's going to take me too long to find it. But I do assume that was what the context was. All right, that's it for us. That's the end. It sounds like somebody's vacuuming over there now, too, so it's a good place to end.
They're cooking in the kitchen. They're cooking in the kitchen.
Gotcha. Perfect place to end then, because I get all crazy about noises.
For that question.
Yeah, Katarina's the best. David, where should people go to? What would you most recommend they consume of yours? This is your moment, your plug time.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. I do have a website, davidfitzgerald.org. I'm easily found on Facebook, and you can always shoot me an email at everybodylovesdave@gmail.com. And I am very happy to talk about all the stuff I talk about, and I can't wait to get the new book out to you guys.
Hell yeah!
It's gonna be good.
Awesome. Well, David, thank you so much for joining us. There are links down in the description to David's stuff, to line stuff, all that sort of stuff. And I think that there's only one way to really say goodbye, and that's more simply to just say adieu.